Chapter 863. With their huge bodies and exaggerated jaws, Liszt had already given this group of giant elephants a name in his heart: shovel-toothed giant elephants. Seeing their rich earth attribute magic and their powerful ability to easily trample the ground, he had an incomparable desire to tame this group of shovel-toothed giant elephants. Use it to build roads. With this group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, the construction of the 500-kilometer gallop shouldn't be a problem. I knew that smoke missions wouldn't give unsolvable difficult missions. It turns out that everything is arranged by the power of fate. Without this group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, there would be number 500-kilometer gallop mission. His mind was suddenly enlightened. The invisible dragon sensed his thoughts and let out a sharp whine, flying out of the material boundary, revealing a crystal-clear body like flowing water. The wild firebird poured out like a waterfall, impacting the shovel-toothed giant elephants on the ground. Ong. Ong. The shovel-toothed giant elephants who were searching for food were attacked by such a fierce firebird and immediately screamed again and again, then crawled on the ground one after another, not daring to move. In World of Warcraft, there was a clear superior and subordinate pressure in front of the dragon. Bard, continue to suppress the shovel-toothed giant elephants. I want to tame them myself. After communicating, Liszt jumped directly off the dragon's back and landed in the middle of the group of shovel-toothed giant elephants. Elephant herds usually had a leader. Liszt noticed that one of the shovel-toothed giant elephants was exceptionally large, and many giant elephants followed behind it, so he understood that this was the leader of the herd. Seeing Liszt walk over step by step, the leader of the herd, oppressed by the firebird, wanted to move its body but did not succeed. There was no other reason. Liszt would also release the firebird, causing great pressure on the leader of the herd. It could only let out a frightened wail. But soon the leader of the herd was confused. Liszt dispersed the firebird and instead took out a large portion of fruit from the gem space. This was the food he had prepared before leaving. As early as when he got the news about the elephant herd, he had expected it, so he prepared to tame them in advance. Carrot and stick food was the carrot and the stick was strength. This was a very skilled skill for Liszt. Back when he tamed Dosen, he had summed up a set of methods to deal with wild beasts. After a few twists and turns, the elephant leader was enveloped by Liszt's intermittent dragon might and attracted by the tempting fragrance of the fruit. It completely understood its fate, to submit to the human in front of it. If it submitted to him, it would have food. If it did not submit, it would be beaten. The logic was clear. Wuxia. The invisible dragon circled around the elephant herd and faithfully carried out the role of a lackey. Compared to the fire dragon Leo, the invisible dragon Bard's spirit and will were easier to get used to, and the day of perfection was just around the corner. According to the order, Ethan the Emerald Dragon was first, Bard second and Leo last. The fire dragon's evil thoughts would always suppress Liszt's guidance, leading to ups and downs. He mounted the leader of the elephants and sat cross-legged on the back of the elephant. From time to time he would throw down a portion of fruit. Just like that, he urged the leader of the elephant herd, and the other shovel-toothed giant elephants followed closely behind. The group slowly left the valley of the Xia tribe, heading towards the direction of Infernal Fire City. The sun set and the sun rose. After a day and a night of traveling, they finally crossed the swirling river. They saw the patrolling night squad. The vigilant night squad saw Liszt on the back of the elephant. After a moment of surprise, they hurriedly saluted, "Your Highness. Ask Duarte and Emily to come here immediately. Also send a few carts of fruits. It would be best if there are preserved wild bananas in the warehouse," Liszt ordered. "Yes, Your Highness." A moment later, Duarte and Emily arrived at the place where the elephants were parked. They brought 6 carts of fruits. Fruits were scarce in this season, so it was good enough to gather 6 carts of fruits. Ong. Ong. The elephant herd cried out from time to time, but overall, it was under Liszt's control. "Your Highness, what can I do for you?" Duarte looked at the elephant herd driven by Liszt. He was not surprised. This incredible Dragon Knight Lord always had unexpected results. "This batch of shovel-toothed giant elephants is a mid-level dragon beast that I have just tamed. I like their magic. If they are used to repair the road, it will definitely be more efficient." Liszt gestured for the night squad to distribute the fruits to the elephant herd. "However, I do not have time to tame them. I will leave the specific taming plan to you." Duarte looked troubled. "Your Highness, I do not know much about taming animals." Emily replied in a clear voice, "Your Highness, please rest assured and leave it to Emily." "If that is the case, Duarte, do your best to cooperate with Emily. I will leave the task of taming the shovel-toothed giant elephants to Emily. List was very satisfied with Emily's attitude. A qualified follower should accept the task given by the Lord without hesitation instead of complaining. Duarte also realized that he had said something wrong. He hurriedly corrected himself. Your Highness, please rest assured. I will do my best to cooperate with Emily in taming the elephants. Give me the people and give me the things. The priority is to tame the shovel-toothed giant elephants. List glanced at Duarte. Then he said to Emily, these shovel-toothed giant elephants have a gentle personality and are actually quite easy to tame. However, it will take some training to make them understand how to cooperate with the road construction. You have the experience of taming blizzard beasts, and the blizzard beast should know how to cooperate with you in taming the shovel-toothed giant elephants. Yes. Then you will follow me for the next 2 days. I will make the leader of the elephant herd listen to your instructions. Without the suppression of List's strength, it would be difficult for the shovel-toothed giant elephants to surrender to an Earth Knight. Emily's face showed a touch of joy when she heard this. Yes, Your Highness. She was very eager to get along with the greatest lord in her mind. In her young girl's heart, List occupied a huge position. It was a kind of worship mixed with many emotions. Of course, she was not a girl who would be overwhelmed by emotions. She had an iron will and a clear brain. Your Highness, if you want to tame the elephant herd, food is the most basic guarantee. The food of the shovel-toothed giant elephants must be amazing. At present, the food reserves in Fire City may not be enough. Leave it to me to arrange. You go and bring the Blizzard Beast team here first. We will gather here in an hour. List turned around and communicated with the invisible dragon Bard using the Dragon Heart Code, asking Bard to maintain the stability of the elephant herd and prevent it from harassing the plantation not far away. He went straight to the Master Tower of Fire City and found Achi, who had returned. Brother. Achi, I have found the natural node of Black Horse Island. Now I can travel freely between Black Horse Island and Flame Island. If you don't need your space ring for the time being, leave it to me to transport the materials. If you need any materials, you can directly make a list and I will bring them for you. Yes. Achi carried all the materials in the space ring to the laboratory and handed them back to List. 6 space rings were worn on her hand. List returned to the elephant herd. Emily had already gathered with the Blizzard Beast team near the elephant herd. After seeing List, Dosen and the 8 little ones wagged their tails. They had not forgotten their former master. Woof woof. Woof woof. Dosen, come here. List smiled and waved. Dosen suddenly rushed over and intimately rubbed his head against List's trousers. It was huge like a small elephant, but at the moment, it was as docile as a pug. Chapter 864. The shovel-toothed giant elephants know 3 kinds of magic, all of which are high-level magic, namely hard stone armor, rock cluster, and earth trample. Hard stone armor is covered with a layer of rock. Rock cluster is somewhat similar to rock thorns, but it protrudes as a linear sharp stone wall. Earth trample is an earth attribute magic that has never appeared before. It is triggered by the stamping of the shovel-toothed giant elephants, which can quickly flatten the ground. It was as if a large jack had suddenly slammed into the ground. According to the different strength of each shovel-toothed giant elephant, the area of earth trample is also different. For example, when the leader of the herd activates earth trample, the area reaches a circle with a diameter of 10 meters. Some of the newly grown shovel-toothed giant elephants may only have a diameter of about 5 meters, and the young elephants that have just learned this magic are centered on the stomp, with a diameter of about 1 meter. Hard stone armor and rock cluster are not the focus. The focus of taming is on earth trample. List requires Emily to be proficient in controlling the herd to release earth trample. At the same time, to ensure the discipline of the herd. When the herd has worn off its bestiality, it will begin to introduce the knight to ride. Only when the knight rides and drives can the 121 shovel-toothed giant elephants move in unison. Throughout the second half of January, List assisted Emily in training the shovel-toothed giant elephant herd, while constantly shuttling between Black Horse Island and Flame Island, transporting the necessary materials to maintain the daily operation of the territory. Forward, shovel-toothed giant elephants. Emily rode on the back of the leader of the herd and issued a command. Behind her were more than 100 large and small shovel-toothed giant elephants. On the back of each giant elephant was a knight, led by a young knight. Ong. The giant elephants raised their trunks from time to time and let out a dull cry. Then they lined up in a disorderly line and set out from the elephant garden, along the 40-meter-wide road that had been trampled into a hardened block of earth. The speed of their advance was not fast, but the momentum was magnificent, constantly rolling up the dust on the road as if it was smoking. Around the herd, the blizzard beasts, under the leadership of Dosen, constantly circled around the shovel-toothed giant elephants to prevent them from walking around. Under the dual control of the night and the blizzard beasts, the elephants began to gradually get used to their current way of walking and were no longer free and undisciplined. This is the embryonic form of my mammoth orders of chivalry. In the future, I will continue to expand the population size of the shovel-toothed mammoth, cultivate more Earth-attributed Earth Knight, and run in with the shovel-toothed mammoth to carry out construction projects. List rode on the back of the invisible dragon and disappeared into the material boundary. He was in a good mood. He had already decided to rename his direct subordinate orders of chivalry the Burning Legion. The first orders of chivalry in the Burning Legion was the mammoth orders of chivalry in front of them. They weren't focused on fighting but on construction. Stop. Emily ordered loudly after the elephants arrived at their destination. The giant elephants immediately stopped their somewhat disjointed movements in a disorderly manner. They slowly moved their positions and arranged themselves into a more orderly group. In front of them there used to be a small hill, but now there was only a bare mound of earth. Riding on the leader of the elephants, Emily slowly turned around and gave new instructions to the elephants behind her. First row, step forward. The first row of shovel-toothed mammoths, driven by the knight, stepped forward to the designated position, and then, following Emily's instructions, the knight shouted to their mounts, "Shovel-toothed mammoth, trample the earth." The shovel-toothed mammoths raised their forelimbs and stomped heavily on the ground. The power of magic bloomed in an instant, and the ground seemed to be smashed by a weight of thousands of pounds. There was an earthquake-like shaking. It could be seen with the naked eye that the ground, which had already been compacted to the point that water droplets could not penetrate, sank another tens of centimeters, and the soil became more solid. If a shovel were to be used to shovel the soil now, it was feared that the shovel would not be able to dig out an inch of soil. The soil was almost as hard as a rock. It was such powerful magic that the original mountain was abruptly flattened. Second row, step forward. Emily gave another order, and the second row of shovel-toothed mammoths, under the knight's control, repeated the previous operation and stomped a few centimeters deeper into the ground. Just like that, row after row of shovel-toothed mammoths repeatedly trampled the ground back and forth. List was very comfortable watching from the sky. Although the degree of integration is not enough, orders of chivalry can already start building the road. It doesn't need to be 40 meters wide, 20 meters is enough. And the road doesn't need to be so solid, the elephants just need to step back and forth. The most suitable road for a knight's charge was the kind of flat ground with moderate softness and hardness. Real hard roads were really not suitable, as it would hurt the horses' hooves too much. That night, after orders of chivalry returned from their training, List summoned Emily into the castle and informed her about the road building. Duarte, Claus, and the other captains were present at the meeting. My plan is to build the road from here to here. He gestured with his hand on the map. Starting from Infernal City and building it in the direction of the Flame Mountain, all the way to the Jade Mountain where the light green gem dragon rested. The straight line distance was about 400 kilometers. However, there was a mountain range in the way and they needed to make a large detour to avoid the mountain range. It was easy for shovel-toothed mammoths to flatten a small mountain, but it was not possible for them to do so on a large mountain. This distance was just enough for 500 kilometers. Finally, I want to build a new city in this place. I originally planned to build King City here, but I won't consider King City for now. I'll build a Jade City first. The branch of the Flame Mountain range is called Jade Mountain, and as the name suggests, there is a huge jade mine here. Jade mine? Is it really a jade mine? At first, Duarte and Claus did not understand why List did not build the road to Estuary City first, but instead wanted to build such a road. Now they understood, everything would be worth it if there was a huge jade mine. I'll give you 2 months. Orders of chivalry will be in charge of building the road. You must ensure their safety along the way and dispatch serfs to transport supplies. The road was named by List as Jade, Stone, Fire, Avenue. The road construction ceremony was officially launched on February 1st, and the road construction project began. List was still doing logistics, traveling between Black Horse Island and Flame Island, mainly transporting food. Of course, the task of finding natural nodes did not stop, but finding new natural nodes was not something that could be done overnight. He allocated more time to cultivation, often going to Jade Mountain and the light green gem dragon to cultivate, going to Doomsday Volcano and the fire dragon to cultivate. Of course, most of the time he practiced with the invisible dragon. The Invisible Dragon Knight, Dragon Do Chi Secret Manual was expanding from Ghost Erase, Shadow Lift and Snow Avalanche, creating the 4th move Sonic Boom Thrust, and the 5th move Toxic Dragon, Drill. The Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon Do Chi Secret Manual also created the 6th move Magma Point, and the 7th move Taisui, Cut, after Dragon Chop, Burning Sky, Sweep, Swallowing Sun, Stab, Boiling Sea, Twist and Shaking Earth, Hammer. The training with the light green gem dragon was even more rapid, leaving a faint figure of the knight in the mind of the light green gem dragon. The figure of the knight was still very blurry, and its expression could not be seen clearly. There was only an outline, but it was basically the same as List's figure. Riding on the light green gem dragon in the spiritual world, there was a vague 5-meter dragon spear in his hand, and a light gray cloak formed by smoke. Basically, this was the imprint that List left in the heart of the light green gem dragon. Chapter 865. In the mind of the light emerald dragon Ethan, List's faint figure had gradually been imprinted. However, in the mind of the invisible dragon Bard, a spiritual imprint had not yet appeared. The fire dragon Leo, who had the longest running in time, also did not have a spiritual imprint. Perhaps it would be the most difficult dragon to have a spiritual imprint. The growth of evil thoughts would always destroy List's influence on it. Basically, every month, List would cut off Leo's mind, filter out the evil thoughts and leave behind the pure original thoughts. If I want to explore the world, taking Leo with me is the most suitable. He has the most powerful fighting power, but the invisible dragon Bard is also very suitable. Sometimes he would struggle with who he should choose as his final mount. Fortunately, there was still a long time to choose. He was now waiting for a chi to practice. The magic gate experiment plan was done over and over again, and he could only wait for a chi to perfectly master the spatial elemental incarnation. At present, a chi could transform her whole body into spatial elements, but her mastery of spatial magic was still a little lacking. But soon, with her terrifying talent, perfect mastery was just around the corner. When the magic gate is built, I won't have to work so hard anymore. It's really troublesome to make 3 trips to and from Black Horse Island almost a week to transport supplies. Flame Island was in a dry and cold winter. Everything stopped growing and there was a serious shortage of food, coupled with the constant absorption of the Moonkiller natives. He also raised a group of shovel-toothed giant elephants, which consumed even more food. The Flame territory had a large trade of sea salt, glass, white paper and so on. Coupled with perfume, soap and porcelain that was being explored, it could barely maintain the current supply. Just as he was waiting for the magic gate, another piece of good news was brought back by the knight who attacked the Moonkiller natives. Accompanying them was a little girl, no more than 12 or 13 years old. Your Highness, this little girl is called Hippolyta. Her father is Pontlisi, the listener of the small Luo tribe. We found traces of elves in the Luo tribe. Our request for a ransom was rejected, so we arrested all the natives of the Luo tribe. The knight captain reported truthfully. We then found a group of elves hidden in Hippolyta's wooden house, all of whom had contracted with her. We then brought the elves and the worm stalks back. The knight behind the knight captain brought out a large wooden box. After opening it, it was revealed that the box contained tightly bound sprites, 1 greater sprite, 3 lesser sprites as well as 2 sprite worms. List was pleasantly surprised. He had thought that the sprites mentioned by the knight squad were only referring to a few sprite worms. After all, the Luo tribe was just a small tribe with a population of no more than 200 people. Unexpectedly, they actually brought back 1 big and 3 small as well as 2 sprite worms. The value of this harvest far exceeded that of capturing a large tribe. Good, you've done well. Captain Carl, what's your title? Which lord are you following? List asked. Carl's body trembled when he heard this, and he could not contain his excitement. Your Highness, Carl is a lord knight and I follow you. So you are my direct follower. In that case, from now on, I promote you to Baron. Are there any aristocrats among your squad members? Thank you, Your Highness. No, they are all commoner knight. In that case, everyone will be conferred the title of Lord Knight. Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Your Highness. The knight squad members all knelt on one knee and solemnly performed the oath of allegiance to List. Excitement could be seen on their faces. In fact, such a scene often occurred on Blazing Island, where a knight would often be conferred the title of nobility or promoted to the rank of nobility due to their military exploits. The knight squad was rewarded. List then looked at the faintly trembling Moonkiller girl, Hippolyta. This skinny native girl's body had yet to fully develop, but she was already quite tall, standing at a little over 1.6 meters. Her skin was the color of wheat, she wore animal skin clothes and she was barefoot without shoes. Her hair was parted in the middle, reaching her shoulders and was very black and shiny. There was even a row of feathers in her hair. This was the favorite adornment of moon killer females. The older they were, the more they liked to have feathers of various colors on their heads, forming a beautiful crest. Hippolyta's crest had yet to take shape. However, probably because she was the daughter of a listener, her living conditions were not bad. She was cleaner than most moon killer children, and she also had delicate features. This was especially so for the middle style, which was very interesting. Liszt really wanted to say, "Call me Big Brother from now on and I'll teach you how to comb your hair in the middle." Of course, he was too embarrassed to say such words and only smiled as he sized Hippolyta up. He had a good impression of the little girl who had hidden an elf and not killed him. "Are you Hippolyta?" he asked in choppy moon language, which he had recently taken some time to learn. Speaking moon language was not difficult, and the pronunciation skills were traceable. After all, most languages in the legendary continent, including Windlass and Serpentine, had inherited moon language words. Vartek. The little girl mustered her courage and asked in gibberish. Liszt did not understand. He turned to look at the sorcerer interpreter beside him. Most knight had learned moon language before, but they were not proficient in it. They basically communicated according to the operation manual. Sorcerers who studied moon language were more suitable as interpreters. "Your Highness," she asked, "why you captured her father, her friends and her family?" "This is a misunderstanding. I invited them to live in my territory. Life here is far better than in the Luo tribe. You will also start a new life here," Liszt said, and the interpreter translated. The communication was smooth. "So don't worry, don't be afraid. You really won't kill us." "Yes, we won't kill you. In fact, we have many moon killer people here. They are all from different tribes who came here to start a new life." "Then can you let my father and my brother go?" "Of course. But as a condition of the deal, can you cancel the contract with these elves?" Liszt showed a wolf-like grin, showing his patience. He was willing to respect the moon killer people who respected the elves, but not because they were little girls. "They are my friends, gifts from my father. Can you not kill them?" Hippolyta said nervously. "You like them?" "Yes, I like elves very much. They are very cute and should not be killed. But my father only allowed me to wish for one elf on my birthday. I started wishing when I was 7 and when I was 12, I only wished for 6 elves. The rest were killed." Obviously, the moon killer people of the Luo tribe were still moon killers. It was just that Hippolyta had a good impression of elves. "Give them to me. I will take good care of them. Not a single elf will be killed in my territory. They live happily. You will often see elves in the future. They are free and unrestrained. As for you, you should go to school." Chapter 866. Who is the headmaster of the Moon Killer Academy? Liszt asked after Hippolyta was sent away. "It's Baron Rick Footprints." "Rick how?" Liszt recalled that Rick was his former classmate at the Night Academy, who had followed him since he was in the Flower Town. The first time he went to the battlefield, he was seriously injured and almost died. Since then, his body was left with hidden dangers and he began to take the administrative route. "Tell Rick to educate Hippolyta well. He is someone I pay close attention to." "Understood, Your Highness." With the continuous absorption of the Moonkiller clan, the territory's Moonkiller serfs had already exceeded 200,000 people, and the ancient wizards alone had reached 4,000 people. As for the knight, wizards, and commoners who migrated from the Flame territory, there were less than 20,000 people in total. Such a disparity made the Flame territory's rule very precarious. Although he and Achi were enough to suppress all disturbances in terms of high-end combat strength, but they could not suppress everywhere and still had to rely on the Flame territory to maintain stability. But with the continuous increase of the Moonkiller clan, the Flame territory's control over the Moonkiller clan was bound to decline. The Moonkiller clan was distributed on Flame Island. There were certainly millions of them, and even tens of millions was not impossible. After all, they were spread out in most of the forest corners of Flame Island. As for the number of Flame territory, even if magic gates were opened and immigrants were allowed, it would still be difficult to reach hundreds of thousands in a short time. With the large number of Moonkiller clan and the small number of Flame territory, Liszt felt that he had to adopt a more stable method to control Flame Island. His plan was to assimilate the Moonkiller clan, integrate them into the Night system and make them loyal to him. At the same time, he had to divide and disperse the Moonkiller clan. Standing on the castle's balcony, Liszt looked at the sun that was still bright but did not provide much heat. His mind was clear. It is not realistic for everyone to be equal. The difference in levels under the night system must be maintained. However, the conflict between the different levels can be resolved through the channels of ascension. Nobles, flame folk and moon killer are 3 levels, but each level must have a channel to become a nobleman. His gaze shifted towards the faraway plantation, where a night squad was patrolling. Moon killer serfs were busy plowing the fields under the leadership of the infernal giants, preparing for the upcoming spring sowing. Especially young moon killers like Hippolyta, they could be groomed to become night class. As for the moon killers, their generation would be cut off. After banning the killing of sprite worms to produce magic power dust, the moon killers would not be any better than the flame people in terms of magic talent. Of course, the cultivation of moon killer knights still depended on talent. Moon killer knights without talent would continue to be serfs. Young people are the true knight candidates of the Burning Legion in the future. They will accept the new concept that I bring and not continue to stick to the rigid knight system. Ongchi crunchy. The great potato sprite Kutch's shout interrupted List's thoughts and brought him back to reality. He saw Kutch flying towards him with a sprite of the same height. List. Kutch came to the balcony and laughed foolishly. Kutcher, who was captured by the Saint tribe, lived a miserable life. Only when he was rescued by List did he become completely happy. Recently, List had given it a mission to help the newly arrived sprites familiarize themselves with their new life in Firefire Castle. One after another, sprite worms were rescued from the various moonkiller tribes. But of the greater sprites and lesser sprites, there were only 1 big sprite and 3 small sprites brought by Hippolyta. Above the head of the greater sprite was a small sapling with large leaves. A bunch of bananas hung from the sapling. It was a greater banana sprite. Bananas were a type of fruit that was most loved by the spatula elephant. It could be said that the arrival of the greater banana sprite provided a stable source of food for the spatula elephant. Bobby say, "Was." He teased the greater sprite, whose eyes were full of curiosity. Because it had just formed a contract, the greater sprite was still a bit shy with strangers and could not speak in Serpentine. Its name was Bobby. This was the name given by Hippolyta, and List felt that it was good, so he did not change it. Ibo Bobby. Bobby muttered the language it knew and then, driven by the contract, tried to say, Li Shi Ti. It's List. Kutch corrected him. Li Shi Ti, List. Li Shi Ti, Bobby is so stupid. Kutch sneered and continued to correct him. List flame Kutch's List. Bobby seemed to understand the other party's mockery and shouted angrily, Hibo Bobby. Well, go play on the side. List did not care about Bobby's learning progress. After the sprites' worm stalks were planted, they could do whatever they wanted. There was no point in teaching them. In addition to the banana sprite Bobby, there were 3 other sprites, namely the kingflower sprite, the silver fangrass sprite, and the big pom-pom sprite. Among them, the kingflower was a parasitic plant, generally parasitizing the roots, stems, and branches of plants, somewhat similar to mushrooms. However, it was a plant with flowers the size of a wash basin and was a magic ingredient. In other words, the kingflower sprite was a magic ingredient sprite and was very valuable. The only drawback was that it was not easy to cultivate, as it needed to be parasitized on a large tree. The silver fan grass was an ornamental plant. When its fruit matured, it looked like a silver coin or a small silver fan. The big pom-pom sprite was also an ornamental plant, closely related to the scallions, but not belonging to the same genus. The middle of the plant grew a cylindrical, half-a-person-tall stalk, and the tip of the stalk was a purple scallion, which was very interesting. The value of these 2 sprites had yet to be discovered. In addition, there were 2 sprite worms. So far, more than 40 sprite worms had been rescued from the Moonman tribe, and most of them had not been found to have any value. Coral Island, Flower Town, in a tavern near the dock. 2 guests dressed as merchants sat in the corner of the tavern, whispering. Did you find out? Did you bring the gold coins? Don't worry, I won't be short of your money, take it. Hey, with the gold coins, everything is easy. Investigate clearly, the knight returns to Black Horse Island 2 to 3 times a week. The time is not fixed, but the basic pattern is unchanged. The other magician hasn't appeared yet. He's been staying on Flame Island. What is the mount and what does it do every time? The mount has not been found, but each time it is to transport a batch of goods, sometimes food, which is not easy to find out. And each time, it will rest in Thorn Castle for 1 night and leave the next day. I dare not ask more, the specific method of transportation is not clear. Continue to inquire, I want to know more about the whereabouts of the knight. Hey, Black Horse Island's household registration management is very strict. I risked being hanged to help you find out information. If you want me to continue to inquire, you have to pay me more. As long as the information is valuable, remember, money is not a problem. A moment later, the two merchants said goodbye, purchased a batch of goods and left Flower Town. Only one set out for Black Horse Island, and the other for Coral City. The merchant who set out for Coral City, after arriving at the dock, immediately wrote a letter and handed it to another merchant to carry all the way to the Eagle Kingdom. Eventually, the letter arrived in a magnificent castle. On the hillside not far from the castle, a bronze dragon was sleeping. The owner of the castle opened the letter, read the contents blankly and then burned the letter. Sitting in a chair in silence, he whispered softly, "List Flame, the humiliation you have inflicted on me, I will retaliate tenfold, just wait." Chapter 867. This chapter is 100,000 Years of Salted Fish. December, January, and February belong to winter on Flame Island. Although the plants stopped growing because of the dry and cold climate, it was a rare opportunity for construction. It didn't rain for a long time and the land was kept dry. Taking advantage of this time, settlements around Infernal City and the Whirlpool River rose from the ground. Tall wooden houses, rocky administrative offices. Each settlement was planned with a small town as the goal, waiting for residents to move in. All the towns belonged to List. On Flame Island, which was more than 3 million square kilometers, other than the nobles of the Burning Legion, no other nobles could be enfeoffed here. There were many large and small islands in the archipelago, enough for his followers to be enfeoffed. The merits came too quickly, so the enfeoffment naturally wouldn't be good. Basically, his followers' titles did not correspond to their military exploits. Often, it was List who would forcibly find an excuse to promote his followers and give them military exploits. Everyone knew this, so naturally they wouldn't care about the barrenness and richness of the territory. For example, Cross Buckthorn was promoted from Viscount to Count after passing through the Great Whirlpool. Such a huge reward already made him overjoyed. Even if he was given a desert as a fief, he wouldn't be able to complain. Riding on the back of the invisible dragon, carrying a chi at the same time. List moved in the material boundary, inspecting his territory. We still lack people. We lack the backbone of the Knight class. Although the Knight Academy has been training young people, it takes time to grow. And time is the biggest enemy in developing Flame Island. The loyalty of the ancient magicians is always a problem, even if a chi and I are forced to become the moon killer Sekis. Sekis were saints. List had a dragon as his companion, so it was natural for him to become a Seki. As a magic shooter, a chi was the best candidate to become a Seki. But the two of them only became Sekis with their strength. Their appearance was far from the moon killer Sekis, so it was impossible for the moon killer Sekis to sincerely believe that they were Sekis. Only the ancestors of the moon killer Sekis were the Sekis in their hearts. Brother, don't worry, a chi will help you suppress the ancient magicians. Their magic has fallen behind this era. A sorcerer can rely on a few pieces of magic equipment to fight a great ancient sorcerer. They can't make any waves. A chi could now enter the material boundary. She was even bolder than List. She didn't take the ancient sorcerer seriously. It was probably because all the sorcerers were sucking up to her so that a chi could deeply understand her influence on the sorcerers as the embodiment of truth walking in the secular world. I'm not worried about them stirring up trouble. I just feel that the development of Blazing Island isn't fast enough. How long will it take for you to master your space elemental incarnation perfectly? Soon, in the next 2 days, a chi replied. The reason why she rode the invisible dragon with List was to familiarize herself with the material boundary and speed up her familiarity with spatial magic. As expected. 2 days later, in late February, a chi finally mastered the spatial elemental incarnation and could enter the material boundary independently at any time. Moreover, together with List, they could ride the invisible dragon and wander in the world outside the material world, feeling the differences of this world. They could also observe and study the natural nodes. Brother, the preparations for building the magic gate are sufficient. A chi will choose the natural node and build the magic gate. After comparing all the natural nodes near the Flame Islands and the Sapphire Islands, a chi began to enter the long-awaited practical project of the magic transmission array. At present, there were 6 nodes suitable for the opening of the magic gate. Volcanic Crater, Jade Mountain, Reed Marsh, Ruins Entrance, Heart Island and Bone Lake. The first one is to build the Bone Lake Jade Mountain Magic Transmission Array and connect Black Horse Island and Blazing Island. List was excited. The location of these 2 natural nodes was the best, which could directly maximize the convenience of transportation. After all, the Jade Fire Avenue was about to be completed. The construction ability of the elephant orders of chivalry was better than imagined. With continuous running in, the shovel-toothed giant elephants could build 30 kilometers of roads a day. When the time came, Bone Lake was connected to Jade Mountain, and Jade Mountain was connected to Fire City. It would become the main traffic artery for the development of Blazing Island. However, Achi put forward a different opinion. Brother, it is the first time to open a magic transmission array. It is inevitable that there will be accidents and even natural nodes will be destroyed. Achi suggests that we build an unimportant magic transmission array first, accumulate enough experience, and then open the Bone Lake Jade Mountain magic transmission array. I see. Although List did not want to give up, he also understood that what Achi said made sense. It was inevitable to fail the first time. So which one do you think we should build first? Heart Island Reed Magic Transmission Array. First, to verify whether the connection of long-distance natural nodes is feasible. Second, it will not hinder the future trunk of the magic transmission array on Blazing Island. Once it is determined that the magic transmission array is stable and feasible, it can be directly dismantled and a new magic transmission array can be built. Then let's do it this way. You arrange it, I will cooperate. In this way, the tedious and complex construction of the magic gate began. Achi's plan involved a lot of magic materials including space gems. If it weren't for the 6 space gems, List would have been reluctant to use such precious gems for the establishment of the magic gate. Time passed day by day in the preparation work. February ended and March arrived. The spring rain fell on a large area of Blazing Island, and the spring plowing work was carried out. A large number of seeds brought from Black Horse Island were sprinkled in various plantations opened during the winter. Once the seeds of these plantations germinated, many elves of Thorn Castle could migrate to Firewood Castle. While List was busy, Orders of Chivalry finally built the Jade Fire Avenue to the Jade Mountain, and found the light green gemstone dragon entrenched in the Jade Mountain. Oh my god! A dragon! This is the light green gemstone dragon, the one lost by the Eagle Kingdom. It's on Blazing Island. Quick, report to His Royal Highness. It was Carlo Violet's mount when he was alive. The knight exclaimed one after another. They were deeply shocked by the light green dragon entrenched far away on the mountain, ignoring orders of chivalry. However, Emily, who was riding on the back of the leader of the herd, shouted loudly, "Silence! Captain Emily, this is a light green gemstone dragon." Vernal Ink, who participated in the escort work of Orders of Chivalry, could not suppress his impulse. I know. Although Emily's face was young, her expression was serious. This light green gemstone dragon is the mount of His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness has long become a light green gemstone dragon knight. Ah! The knight's glory. Incredible. A third dragon. His Royal Highness has already subdued the light green gemstone dragon. Our Royal Highness, who is favored by the knight's glory for life, already has a 3-headed dragon. The knight no longer knew how to describe it. They had infinitely elevated the glorious image of their lord. At this moment they still felt that they could not set off the greatness of the lord. A dragon knight with a 3-headed dragon, a lord who was only 20 years old, impressively became a dragon knight with a 3-headed dragon. Such an exaggerated achievement could not be described in words. Even Emily, who had already been informed by List and knew of the existence of the light green gemstone dragon Ethan, was shocked. There seemed to be a flame of worship burning in her bones. Chapter 868. It was List's choice to expose the light emerald dragon. Anyway, the news of the 3-headed dragon would be exposed sooner or later. At a time when Flame Island was already in control, there was no harm in exposing it. Moreover, Jade Mountain was the dragon nest of the light emerald gem dragon. Mining here could not avoid the light emerald gem dragon. Moreover, when the spiritual imprint of the light emerald gem dragon was completed, List would try to let Emily get along with the light emerald gem dragon to see if they could work together and become the new dragon knight in the future. The girl was talented and loyal, so she should be vigorously cultivated to share the burden of List. He was only 20 years old, but he had to bear the pressure of a kingdom. It was really not easy. Of course, Emily was only 14 years old this year, and the pressure of becoming a dragon knight was equally great. Even though magic shooter Achi was already 44 years old, she was still not an adult siren according to the age of a siren. The Nation of Fire was a country established by young people. Commander Emily, is this really His Highness's dragon mount? Vernal Ink couldn't believe what he was seeing. Of course. Emily held her head high, feeling an inexplicable sense of pride. Every time List made an incredible achievement, she felt that she would go crazy with excitement. And she remembered very clearly that night, the great Sir Lord stroked her hair and said to her, "Grow up quickly, Emily, you are my candidate for Dragon Knight." Ethan, the light emerald gem dragon, was the dragon that the Sir Lord had chosen for her. She just had to wait for her to grow up, pass Ethan's test, be recognized, and finally succeed in riding the dragon. "I will definitely become a Dragon Knight and follow His Highness." Emily looked at Ethan lying on the distant mountain, and her heart became more and more fiery. Thunder chi overflowed in her meridians as if it was about to rush out and vent. She tried to adjust her breathing, but still could not suppress the restlessness of her chi, like boiling water that was constantly boiling. "Novat, I leave orders of chivalry to you. Continue to flatten the land." She hurriedly ordered her deputy and jumped off the leader of the elephant herd. With a few flashes he arrived at the nearby Jade Firewood Avenue. She stood still on the wide open ground and pulled out the red blood sword that she always carried with her. This sword was List's sword in the past. The ruby's effect was to amplify combat aura. After being melted down and recast by the Iron Knight, it became more compatible with her lightning combat aura. Although it was only a gemstone weapon, it was Emily's treasure. At this moment she grasped the red blood sword and crazily unleashed her chi secret technique, venting the restless chi in her meridians. Gradually, a special kind of change occurred in her meridians. It was as if all the fighting energy had risen into another form, making her feel that her body was constantly becoming lighter. Then he suddenly leaped. He had already soared more than 10 meters into the air. He hovered in the air for a moment before landing easily. An irrepressible surprise appeared on her delicate and immature face. She instantly realized that her fighting energy had been reborn. It had upgraded from mid-level fighting energy to high-level fighting energy. She had become a Sky Knight. Boom. The new high-level lightning combat aura gushed out. Her whole body was like a sharp arrow flying 100 meters into the air. Even if it was just an upgraded fighting energy, she could still forcibly control it, allowing her body to fly steadily for short distances. Day and night of practice had allowed her to master fighting energy to a terrifying degree. She crossed the air and then fell hard around the giant elephant orders of chivalry, leaving 2 footprints on the hard ground. Her legs bent and her sword on the ground. A cloud of dust flew up. The knight of the orders of chivalry turned their heads one after another, alarmed by the noise she made. Then they saw Emily descending from the sky. Some knight were still in a daze, while other knight had already woken up. "Captain Emily," I advanced to. "Sky Knight?" Vernal was the first to rush over. "Captain Emily, have you really advanced to Sky Knight?" He felt incredible, even more incredible than meeting a dragon. Although the light green gem dragon was sudden, it had been a year since the Eagle Kingdom had lost it, and everyone had some guesses in their hearts. However, how old was Emily? She was only 14 years old. An elite Earth Knight at the age of 14 was already exaggerated enough. She had also been appointed as the captain of the Orders of Chivalry. She had long been a figure that could not be ignored. Everyone's view of Emily was that she was a genius and a new star with a promising future. The future would belong to Emily. However, she didn't have to wait until the future. Right now, Emily had become a Sky Knight. When List became a Sky Knight at the age of 17, he broke the historical record of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and became the youngest Sky Knight. Countless people were shocked and envious. Who would have thought that Emily had now broken List's record by 3 years? "Yes, I'm now a Sky Knight." Emily turned over and rode on the leader of the elephant herd. She wanted to continue flying in the sky and feel the joy of becoming a Sky Knight, but she restrained her emotions well. Willpower had always been her greatest talent. "You're only 14 years old this year. Knight's glory favors you, Captain Emily. You're even more talented than His Highness." Vernal's tone was still shocked. Emily raised her brows. "His Highness' talent is not something you and I can imagine. I'm just constantly chasing after His Highness back." "Captain Vernal, work hard." After saying that, she rode the leader of the elephant herd back to the giant elephant orders of chivalry and immediately gave the order to be silent. She was not List. Although she had advanced, she could still restrain the urge to show off. If it were List, he would probably fly around the giant elephant orders of chivalry for a whole day. Looking at the back of the girl riding the elephant, Vernal shook his head slightly, unable to let it go for a long time. He thought that the young Dragon Knight Lord he followed was already a legend. Who would have thought that the girl knight he worked with was also about to become a legend? Becoming a Sky Knight at the age of 14 was almost impossible even for the kingdoms on the continent and the Dragon Knight candidates. Moreover, it was a female Sky Knight. When the girl's back merged into the giant elephant orders of chivalry, he looked at the light green gem dragon in the distance. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and thought of a possibility. Emily is a genius knight that His Highness has carefully nurtured. Then could she be a dragon knight candidate of the Fire Kingdom? Although she is a woman, who can guarantee that she won't become a dragon knight after becoming a Sky Knight at the age of 14? This idea could no longer be suppressed. Vernal knew that it was really possible. As long as Liszt was willing, Emily had enough time to get used to the light green gem dragon. As he thought about it, a slightly wretched smile appeared on his face. Your Excellency Achilles, High Mage. Captain Emily, Dragon Knight. I suddenly feel that the Fire Kingdom doesn't need to worry about the air at all. His Highness should like to cultivate this kind of thing. Liszt, who did not know that his followers were silently criticizing him, looked at the smoke serpentines that appeared in front of him. Mission completed. Reward, Sky Knight Emily. Oh. The Jade Firewood path has been completed. Is my little Emily finally going to advance? A 14-year-old female Sky Knight, my full nurturing of her was not in vain. Emily's growth was surprising, but as the smoke serpentines changed and he saw the new mission content, his expression suddenly changed. Chapter 869. Mission, your routine is being spied on. The danger hiding in the shadows is approaching step by step. Even as a dragon knight, there is no guarantee that you will not be besieged. Fighting is the best solution. Please resolve the crisis in the shadows. Reward, Trace of the Ogre. The reward of Trace of the Ogre did not make Liszt change his expression. It was the content of the mission that made him change his expression. Someone is investigating me. The shadow crisis is approaching. In the Azure Sea, the only one that can pose a threat to me must be the Eagle Kingdom. I killed a dragon knight and lost a dragon. The Eagle royal family will never let it go. And Alonso Cactus is here. He quickly returned to normal, and there was only calmness in his eyes. Besieging the dragon knight, these people are up to something. Although the crisis had begun to ambush, he was not too worried. As early as the war between the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Kingdom, he had already considered the possibility of the Eagle Kingdom accumulating strength to deal with him. If the dragon was not lost, maybe the Eagle Kingdom would suffer a loss. But the dragon was lost. This was a big deal, and even the king could not swallow it. Every dragon represented a huge amount of resources. Investigating my routine and preparing to gang up on me. A new round of dragon slaying is about to take place. The power of fate has already felt the other side's restlessness. This battle is inevitable. Liszt was a dragon knight who was going to directly establish a kingdom. He was upright and sharp, and he would not admit defeat at this time. Besides, there was no reason to admit defeat. There was the magic shooter He in the sea, and he was in an invincible position. There was the invisible dragon bard in the sky. If he escaped into the material boundary, what could the dragon knight do? Even the little fire dragon Leo did not need to appear. He could escape this dragon-slaying battle. On the basis of being undefeated, I will expand the battle and let the Eagle Kingdom regret coming to take revenge on me. He kept thinking about how to deal with it. In fact, with the invisible dragon bard around, he could totally catch a dragon knight off guard and kill it. According to the existing intelligence, even if the Eagle Kingdom had a way to stabilize the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and withdraw the Dragon Knight and dragons from the border, it was impossible to withdraw all the Dragon Knight and dragons. According to the possibility, the Eagle Kingdom could pay a certain price and transfer about 3 Dragon Knight and 2 dragons. There were a total of 8 dragons in the Eagle Kingdom, among which there were 5 Dragon Knights: the White Iron Dragon Knight, the Bronze Dragon Knight, the Amethyst Dragon Knight, the Yellow Dragon Knight, the Lead Dragon Knight, the Silver Dragon, and the other White Iron Dragon and the Brass Dragon. The 5 vassal states had 5 dragons, 2 of which were Dragon Knight, the Copper Dragon Knight, the Crimson Sapphire Dragon Knight, and the Grey Iron Dragon, the Pink Sapphire Dragon and the Gold Emerald Dragon. Among them, the White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex White Iron, guarded the border of the Blast Furnace Castle and could be dispatched. The Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Ferry, guarded the border of the Iron and Steel Ridge and could be dispatched. The Copper Dragon Knight, Lloyd Copper, had the best relationship with the Eagle royal family and could be dispatched. In addition, the Silver Dragon, the symbol of the royal family, and the Grey Iron Dragon of the vassal states could also be dispatched. Dragons were the existence that guarded the fate of a country and could not be mobilized easily. The cost of dispatching them was huge and could even be the fuse to start a border war. If the Eagle Kingdom really gathered a luxurious lineup of 3 Dragon Knight and 2 dragons, it would probably be a magnificent feat that would shake the country. If we win, everything will be fine. Maybe eating me will allow the Eagle Kingdom to restore its national strength in one fell swoop. But if we lose, the Eagle Kingdom will at least lose a layer of skin. If you dare to come, you must be prepared to lose a layer of skin. List's eyes were cold and fearless. Without much hesitation, he went directly to the crater of the volcano of Doomsday and called Leo out of the volcanic magma. The war is about to start. During this time, you stay in my body and be ready to fight. Leo did not refuse. Although he was attached to the temperature of the crater, he was also eager to fight. As an evil dragon, how could he be afraid of fighting? Back at the construction site of the Reed Marsh, he said to Achi, "First, stop the construction of the magic gate. Achi, I need you to stay in line with me during this time. There is a dragon-slaying battle waiting for me." Achi understands. Achi will protect my brother. Achi said, clenching her fist. "Well, I believe you." Immediately, the two rode the invisible dragon Bard and directly entered the world outside the material world, shuttling from the natural node of the Bone Lake to Black Horse Island. List quickly summoned Mary Dawn Daybreak and Xavier Cow Dung at the Thorn Castle. "Your Royal Highness." Mary, who looked like a young man, no longer showed off her sexy figure. She became the leader of the Blood Servants and one of List's eyes, with a high position of power. In the Flame territory, she selected a lot of talented teenagers and planned to expand the number of vampires. "Mary, I want you to immediately lead the Blood Servants to investigate the movements of the Dragon Knight and dragons of the Eagle Kingdom and its vassal states, focusing on Alex, Alonso, Lure, as well as the Silver Dragon and the Grey Iron Dragon. Mary will find out the movements of these Dragon Knight and dragons for your Royal Highness. Time must be fast. Just know the general movements, no need for details." "As you wish, your Royal Highness." List ordered Xavier. "Your task is to find out the movements of the Sapphire family, especially the Grand Duke and his Sapphire Dragon." It was difficult to judge the position of the Sapphire family, so he did not consider joining forces with the Sapphire Grand Duke in this dragon-slaying battle. He did not like to find people to cooperate with him if he could solve it on his own. People who he did not trust enough would betray him at any time. Xavier bowed and replied, "Yes, your Royal Highness." "Are you prepared for the traces of rat activity in the territory? The suspicious rats are under our surveillance, and part of the information was deliberately released by me. Basically, we can ensure that everything is under control." "Very well, then continue to reveal my schedule to these rats. Remember, it is a regular and fixed schedule for a period of time. And I also want you to spread the news to these rats that I often go back and forth to the Dodo Island. There is a volcano there, which is Leo's place of practice." List decided to take the initiative to set up the battlefield and adopt the method of fishing. No one knew that he could rely on the power of fate to avoid danger in advance, which was the most valuable thing to take advantage of. Xavier did not ask for the reason and directly accepted the order. "Understood." So, the Two Eyes, Vampire and Rat went on with their orders. List did not stop at all. He directly crossed the natural node with a chi and arrived at the Island of Souls. From the Island of Souls, they sneaked toward the Kingdom of Eagle. He wanted to find some natural nodes on the coast of the Kingdom of Eagle, especially the flight route of the Dragon Knight. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Since the Kingdom of Eagle dared to launch a dragon-slaying battle, they had to pay a heavy price. On the battlefield, List would certainly not be able to beat the other party in a group fight. What he had to do was to use the invisible dragon to deal with the opponent and turn the dragon-slaying battle into a farce. When the Kingdom of Eagle knew that they could not catch List, they would definitely retreat. Then, on the way of retreat, it would be an opportunity for the invisible dragon to assassinate. Chapter 870. The Flower Town's Wharf Tavern. Two merchants were sitting together, the same two as the last time. This time, there was new information about the contents of the transaction. "I have ascertained the information you wanted. It took a lot of effort to bribe a servant of Thorn Castle. That knight always transports supplies to the Dodo Island." "The Dodo Island?" "That's right, it is an island in the north. I have brought you the nautical chart. How many gold coins do you want to pay me?" "How about 10? 20? Don't be greedy, 15? Hee 17. This isn't just for me. I spent a lot of money to bribe that servant from Thorn Castle." "Will the cat be out of the bag?" "Rest assured, that servant is an old member of the castle, no one will suspect him." After the other side agreed to pay 17 gold coins, The merchant explained the situation of the Dodo Island in full detail, including the information about the volcanic crater, the forest of skulls, and so on, as well as the knight practicing cultivation on the island. If someone investigated, they would find that the Dodo Island was indeed under construction. However, it was not a practice area but a small town where volcanic ash would be mined and used to produce cement. It only took half a month for this news to reach Alonso Celeste's hands. In order to deliver the news in time, he had arranged for vampires to once again lurk in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. However, in order to avoid being discovered, the Black Knight family's vampires acted very cautiously, concealing the fluctuations of blood magic. The family already knew that a group of vampires had defected and sought refuge under List. The Dodo Island. Alonso called for his trusted knight, arranged for the Eagle Knight to separately inform His Highness Alex, Archduke Neuer, and Duke Piero that the fire extinguishing operation has officially begun. On April 3rd, we will assemble at the Sapphire Hot Spring Island. The Eagle was a mid-level wind-attribute World of Warcraft. It was not strong in battle but it was very fast. Carrying the beacon bestowed by Alonso, the Eagle Knight quickly set sail from Alonso's castle and flew to various parts of the Eagle Kingdom. Looking at the knights disappearing into the horizon, Alonso clenched his fists tightly. His Majesty still trusts me to lead this operation. I will not let him down. List, Flame, you must be very proud right now. You're young and successful, eager to build your country, but you don't know that the old hunter has already laid a trap for you, hee. The layout of the dragon-slaying war usually took a long time. After making all the preparations that he could, List quickly went to the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom and kept looking for natural nodes. It was a pity that the material boundary here seemed to be more stable than that of the Fire Islands. After searching for more than half a month, he only found 2 natural nodes. One of them was in a place he was familiar with, the Kurong Mountain Iron Mine. The other was between a reef not far from the coastline. It was also a very familiar place. Back then he met the old Siren Izzy here. He called this place the Siren Reef Group. It was a pity that Izzy was not here, and he did not see this charming siren again. I hope these 2 natural nodes happen to be on the return route of the Dragon Knight. Otherwise I can only try to assassinate them. After all, Bard is still underage. If he is an adult and his strength is at its peak, I can directly go to each Dragon Knight station to assassinate him. The invisible dragon was now only 80 years old, and his battle strength was not strong enough. If he went deep into the enemy's rear to assassinate him, the risk would not be small. Who knew whether these Dragon Knight, which had been passed down for many years, would have countermeasures such as magic or fighting skills that could seal off space. At present, List's main business idea was to stabilize the situation and not make waves. Soon he received news from the Blood Servant, the White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex White Iron, who was supposed to be stationed at the border of Blast Furnace Castle, was not in the station and had returned to the capital. Since the daughter of the Eagle King married the younger brother of the Blast Furnace Castle King, Duke of Heisberg, the diplomatic relations between the 2 countries had become complicated. Under normal circumstances, the kingdoms would not become a family just because of marriage. In fact, in the previous generations almost all kingdoms had marriage but they still had to fight. As I expected, Alex was released from the Eagle Kingdom and the Blast Furnace Castle Kingdom. If there is a dragon-slaying battle, he must be one of them. The White Iron Dragon was powerful, and Alex could be said to be the #1 expert in the Eagle Kingdom. There were 2 White Iron Dragons in the Eagle Kingdom. One of them had not found a Dragon Knight, but this dragon had once fought with the Dragon Knight and almost killed the first-generation Sapphire Dragon Knight. Their fierce battle strength was evident. As for Alex, he had even killed an ice dragon and enjoyed the title of Dragon Slayer. List thought for a moment, then let a Chi give instructions to Mary Dawn Daybreak through the magic platform. Continue to follow Alex's news. Once he takes action or stays in seclusion, report to me directly. He had a magic platform. Letting Mary and other blood servants lurk in the Eagle Kingdom with the magic platform, the speed of news transmission was very fast. Unfortunately, it was not easy to make a magic platform, and the security measures had not been set up yet. In addition, the training of the lurkers was difficult, and the vampires also needed time to develop. Otherwise, they could directly set up an espionage unit and stationed it in the major kingdoms. At present, only some blood servants could hold a magic platform. As the blood servants continued to take their positions, the information continued to come in. Alonso left the station on his dragon, Grand Duke Lure of the Grand Duchy of Red Iron did not show up for a few days, Duke Piero of the Duchy of Grey Iron also closed his door, and Prince Alex also closed his door. There were also people who found the silver dragon leaving the dragon nest. Then there was news that the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom once again had friction on the border. The whole month of March seemed very ordinary, but the movements of the Eagle Kingdom were known by List. If it were not for the smoke mission warning in advance, these movements would not be surprising at all. However, under the close observation of List, these movements all became abnormal. It is basically certain that the three Dragon Knight, Alonso, Alex and Neuer will participate in the dragon-slaying battle. The Grey Iron Dragon of the Duchy of Grey Iron will also participate in the war, and there is also a silver dragon. The clues of the other Dragon Knight and dragons are still unclear. So, if they want to ambush me, where will they choose? List looked at the map of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and thought that the Dragon Knight must gather before launching an attack, so somewhere between Dodo Island and Black Horse Island must be the attack site. This was the battlefield that List took the initiative to arrange. With this sea as the center point, the surrounding islands may become an ambush site. The most likely place should be Hot Spring Island. The Earl of Hot Spring Island is an old earl. I don't know if he will be involved. The mice I sent to investigate may find some traces, and these other islands may also become ambush sites. The Eagle Kingdom has been operating for many years. Who knows if there are any noble lords who have been instigated here. During the dragon-slaying battle in the Aquamarine Sea, the light green sapphire Dragon Knight, Carl Law Violet, unexpectedly appeared. The Sapphire Grand Duke guessed that there was a traitor among his followers, to provide a place for Carl Law to stay. However, no trace of the traitor was found. After all, there were many deserted islands in the Sapphire Archipelago where the Dragon Knight could stay. List touched his chin, and his eyes seemed to see the threads of fate constantly trembling. Even the Sapphire Grand Duke will reach an agreement with the Eagle Kingdom to work together to get me to pave the way for Anthony? He included the Sapphire Grand Duke in the dragon-slaying battle. Prepare for the worst. Chapter 871. Fire City was running low on food. List still took some time to transport supplies to support the construction of Fire City. At the same time, he also celebrated his follower Emily for successfully becoming a Sky Knight. He handed the Advanced Thunder Attribute Battle Energy Manual, 15 kg Thunder Sky Flash, to the young girl. Emily, the glory of the night has blessed you. You have inherited my glory and become the youngest Sky Knight in the Sapphire, Flame, and even the entire legendary continent. No, it is the glory of your highness that has blessed me, Emily replied in a clear voice. Ah, that's too high profile. List smiled and rubbed the head of the young girl, who was already 1.7 meters tall. Although her figure was still flat, the young girl's face was more and more delicate, with a hint of exotic charm. Female Sky Knights are very rare. I hope you can continue to climb to the peak. Emily will definitely become what your highness has been looking forward to. I will follow your highness back and never stop. The young girl was talking about the Dragon Knight. This was List's expectations for her. Looking at the determination on the young girl's face and the vitality that her body exuded, he sighed. Perhaps this is youth? Emily, I don't have a suitable weapon to give you as a gift. This swift shadow bow has accompanied me in battle for a period of time. I'll give it to you in hopes that you can find the time to practice your archery skills. After becoming a Dragon Knight, List had not used archery for a long time. The swift shadow bow was completely useless. Emily took the swift shadow bow excitedly. Her vivid expression conveyed her inner feelings to List. She was willing to sacrifice anything for List, whether it was a sword or a bedsheet. In the following time, List was given another title. Emily was made a Viscount for training the Giant Elephant Orders of Chivalry and building the Jade Firewood Avenue. The other knight were also promoted according to their contributions. Basically, as long as there was an opportunity, List would give followers. The Flame Archipelago was too big, and what he lacked was followers to help him develop it. After leaving the Flaming Island, List calculated the time and found that it was almost April. Judging from the movement of the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom, it was about to reach the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. In order to show that he was relaxed and unguarded, he even made a big trip to Ironhoof Island to inspect his territory, Ironhoof City. Viscount Fox, Baron Gort, Baron Blair. All of you need to make preparations as soon as possible to recruit more knight to migrate to Blazing Island. Countless military achievements are waiting for you. You can poach knight from all over Ironhoof Island and promise them titles. List still felt that the Sapphire Knight was more convenient to use. He would take as many as he had. At the banquet, Gort livened up the atmosphere. Even if List did not like to drink, it was rare for him to drink a few cups of fresh flower wine. Taking advantage of the hot atmosphere, Gort smiled and said, "Your Highness, the development of Ironhoof City is on the right track. I have not been bathed in your glory for a long time, which makes me very anxious. I miss the time I spent with you all the time. I wonder when your Highness will let me go to Blazing Island? But I think your life in Ironhoof City is also very comfortable." List joked. Gort's wife and children all lived in Black Horse Island, and all of his children had entered the official class of the territory. List, on the other hand, was living a leisurely life in Ironhoof City with his lover Freya, whom he met in Flower Town, and his illegitimate son Donald. No matter how good it is, it can't compare to the time spent following your Highness. Well, when the time comes, you will all go to Blazing Island to temporarily manage Ironhoof City and do a good job in transporting Night. List stopped Gort's flattery, raised his glass and said, "My followers, glory belongs to me, I am with you. To the glory of your Highness." After inspecting Ironhoof Island, List went to Tulip Castle, where he gathered with Madame Penelope, the Marquis of Oxtail, and other relatives to talk about the development of Blazing Island and Tulip Island. Before leaving, Madame Penelope once again asked her servants to bring a potted plant. "List, my dear young man, you have become a dragon knight, have a vast land, and the sprites are flying towards you. But this is grandmother's intention, the embodiment of the glory of the night." The magic eyes swept over and the potted plants did not breed sprite worms, but he still smiled and took it. "I will take good care of these potted plants and look forward to them breeding more sprites for me." The elder sister Elvira said with a smile, "List, next month I hope you can attend my wedding with Hibbert Basil." Hibbert Basil was the son of the Count of Long White Island and was a suitable match for Elvira. After more than a year of contact, Elvira had already recognized this Earth Knight, who was 1 year younger than her. Their relationship had progressed to the point where they were about to enter the wedding, which could be regarded as a wonderful marriage. "Of course I will attend." List was not very fond of his elder sister, but he also did not deliberately alienate her. "If you are willing, Basil family can come to the Blazing Islands to develop. It is great that you can attend the wedding. I will have a proper discussion with Hibbert. Father also hopes that we can go to the Blazing Islands." Lee William naturally hoped that his children would go to the Blazing Islands. The reason was very simple. List had the three-headed dragon and the arch-wizard Chi, whose development potential far surpassed that of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. One dragon and three-headed dragon, even thinking with their toes, they knew where to go. The Knight of the Tulip family has not been successful in establishing the Tulip Island. Although you have the support of the Moonkiller serfs, there is a lack of food on the island. In order to hunt for World of Warcraft, many Knight have already been sacrificed. Lee Williams sent his father off while pouring out his grievances to his son, who was becoming more and more unfamiliar with him. "Father, don't worry, the difficulties are only temporary. After a period of time, you will realize that things will suddenly become clear." Lee William was skeptical. "Is that so?" "Of course, when have you ever seen me joke?" "That's true." Lee William wanted to say that every time they talked it seemed like a joke. However, every seemingly impossible joke actually happened. 4 years ago, how could he have imagined that his cowardly, good-for-nothing second son, who had nothing but his handsome face, would grow to such a height that could cover the sky and cover the sun? Therefore, a voyage of 7,000 kilometers seemed to be a huge difficulty. But since List said it, he believed it. Leaving Tulip Castle, List returned to Thorn Castle and rested for a night, then set out for the Dodo Island. He planned to spend the whole of April between the Dodo Island and the Black Horse Island to attract the Eagle Kingdom to attack him. He could not do anything with peace of mind until the crisis in the shadows was resolved. He would rather spend a month with the Eagle Kingdom to solve the problem once and for all. Just as List began to use himself as bait, the Earl of the Hot Spring Island sent his knight to block a corner of the island, forbidding anyone from entering or leaving. Only his own servants could drive the carriage. Every day they pulled a lot of supplies and transported them to the corner of the island. Such a piece of information, which would have been inconspicuous at other times, was discovered by the mice commanded by Xavier. Then the news was sent to List. Chapter 872. It was not difficult to assassinate the Dragon Knight, but it was difficult to assassinate the dragon. Because there was a subtle connection between dragons, especially when the dragon magic was fully activated, the connection between dragons was especially strong. Only an elemental dragon could hide from this connection. To assassinate the Dragon Knight, The Dragon Knight only needed to leave the dragon temporarily and not receive the dragon's warning and timely support. After all, it was impossible for the Dragon Knight to stay with the dragon all the time, even when sleeping and eating. If I sneak into Hot Spring Island, the invisible dragon is likely to be sensed. At that time, the Dragon Knight will immediately react and I may have to face two Dragon Knight. It is not very safe to fight two Dragon Knight head-on. Although I am not afraid, I may not be able to intercept them. List was now riding the invisible dragon Bard, and the little fire dragon Leo was also attached to his body. The magic shooter He had been living with him. Only the light green gemstone dragon could not hide, nor could it pursue him for thousands of miles. He left it in the Jade Mountain to continue guarding the Jade Mine and sleeping. With his current combat power configuration, he could barely kill a Dragon Knight by sneak attack. It was really difficult to kill two Dragon Knight head-on. In particular, he did not know for the time being who the two Dragon Knight were, and whether it was a powerful dragon like the White Iron Dragon. Moreover, if a Dragon Knight rushed over while the battle was going on, he would not be able to steal a chicken and would instead alert the enemy. After careful consideration, he rejected the idea of sneak attack in advance. Forget it, according to the original plan, I will think of a way to sneak attack and intercept them when they retreat. I will be patient for the time being. After all, his strength was still developing. If the Fire Dragon and Invisible Dragon were all adults, there was no need to keep a low profile. No matter how many Dragon Knights came, he would kill them all. No matter how many Dragon Knights there were, they were all going to be food. Unlike now, with the advance warning of the smoke mission, he still had to carefully play with schemes. He calculated the food supply of Hot Spring Island. By April 2nd, there was already enough food to transport 5 dragons to the sealed area. In the next few days, the food supply did not increase. List waited on the Dodo Island and understood. 5 dragons and 3 knight. Such a scale is indeed luxurious. They are really giving me face. The Prince of the Eagle Kingdom, the Knight of the White Iron Dragon, Alex White Iron. The Marquis of the Eagle Kingdom, the Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Cipher. The Grand Duke of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight, Lloyd Purple Copper. It was a silver dragon raised by the royal family of the Eagle Kingdom. The Duke of the Duchy of Grey Iron, Piero Grey Iron, and the Grey Iron Dragon he didn't ride. I also have to count the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Sapphire Dragon Knight, and Andrew Sapphire. That's 6 dragons and 4 knight. I have to be careful. Hot Springs Island. Alex sat in the center of the tent, with Alonso, Lure and Piero on his left and right. There was also a middle-aged man. He was the Eagle King's trusted butler and also the breeder of the Silver Dragon. He was temporarily in charge of communicating with the Silver Dragon. The surroundings of the tent were empty. Only these 5 people were discussing. Is the investigation clear? Yes, List often travels between Black Horse Island and Dodo Island. According to the time, he will practice on Dodo Island all day tomorrow. Should we wait and find out more? A long night brings many dreams. Waiting is just a waste of time. And with Andrew's cunning, it will be difficult for him to continue to ignore our actions. Maybe he will find an opportunity to send a letter to List, so that List can cause us more trouble. In my opinion, we should kill Andrew first, then turn around and kill List directly and clear the Blue Sea. We lost the opportunity last time. If we move against Andrew again, the Iron and Steel Ridge will never let it go. This time, it is only against List, so the Iron and Steel Ridge in our country have a tacit understanding, so I was able to withdraw from the front line. If we move against Andrew, I am afraid a new dragon-slaying war will happen. Alonso said calmly. Of course, he wanted to destroy the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. After all, the worst battle of his life was the Battle of Sapphire, but there were some rules that even the Dragon Knight did not dare to break easily. Iron and Steel Ridge, Blast Furnace Castle, and Eagle. Once the balance of the 3 countries was broken, the situation would be very difficult. Alex finally decided, don't have any ideas about Andrew, at least not in the near future. Killing List, snatching the Fire Dragon, and recapturing the light green Sapphire Dragon is our top priority. And that Archmage, we must catch him and make up for the loss of the Eagle Kingdom. Prince Alex, the value of the Archmage is inestimable. I think the Eagle Kingdom will not go back on its word, right? Lure said softly. Of course, Grand Duke Lure, rest assured that the royal family will share the knowledge of magic with you. So when do we start? Tomorrow. The next day before dawn. Alonso had already gotten up and was feeding the bronze dragon affectionately. He did not sleep well last night, but now he had adjusted his mood. There was no longer any excitement or apprehension, and he had also forgotten the previous humiliation. All that was left was the persistence for this dragon-slaying battle. Old friend, it's time to use the wind and thunder to prove that you and I are worthy of the name of the Dragon Knight. The bronze dragon did not roar. It only breathed out 2 puffs of air from its nose to express its desire for battle. It also remembered the humiliation of the last dragon-slaying battle. As a noble dragon, it actually ran away with its tail between its legs. If it did not take revenge, it would not be a dragon. After a while, Duke Piero came over with his gray-mouthed iron dragon. Your Highness Alonso, the gray-mouthed iron dragon is temporarily under your command. I hope it will be covered with glory when it returns. Please rest assured, Your Highness. This dragon-slaying battle will definitely be a happy one. On the other side, Lure was also feeding his bronze dragon. Prince Alex took care of the white iron dragon and silver dragon. The silver dragon breeder was only responsible for raising the silver dragon and could not command the silver dragon to fight, so he needed the Dragon Knight to command it. As a member of the royal family, Alex was also an old friend of the silver dragon and was not unfamiliar with it. So, after determining the attack plan and time, the 3 Dragon Knight and the 5 dragons quickly escaped into the darkness before dawn. The dragon's wings flapped, the clouds rolled, and a mighty dragon-slaying operation began early in the morning of April 7th, 155 of the Sapphire calendar. However, these Dragon Knight did not know. There were rats staring at them. When the carriages transported food ahead of schedule in the middle of the night, the rats had already reported to an inn in a small town nearby. The magician hiding in the inn immediately used the magic platform to send a message to the island of Fairy. Food was transported in the early hours of the morning, just enough for a full meal. The rats did not dare to approach and did not notice any other movements. Achi, who was sleeping lightly, quickly received the message from the magic platform and woke up. List, brother, there is a message. Today may be the day of the Eagle Kingdom's raid. Is it coming? It's earlier than I expected, but the sooner they come, the sooner we can solve it. List rubbed his face. He was not nervous at all. On the contrary, he felt a sense of relief. Without knowing the date of the attack, his emotions were always tense and could not be released. Once the time was determined, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Pushing open the window of the wooden house, it was dark outside. But the air was exceptionally fresh. This was the fragrance brought by the new human skull saplings struggling to germinate from the volcanic ash. Smelling the fresh air, List stretched without caring about his image. Chapter 873. The distance from the hot spring island to the Dodo Island was not short. List had enough time to take a nap, wash up, eat a hearty breakfast and put on his equipment. The Dragon Spear Thunder Fury was kept in the space ring, the Armor Thunder Roar was on his body, and the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword hung on his waist. In addition to all kinds of gemstone accessories that increase strength, recovery speed, combat energy and so on, as well as the red, black and golden tricolored cloak, he looked majestic. Achi was still wearing the magic cloak, and also had all kinds of gemstone accessories on her body. These gemstone accessories were made from the gemstones sent by the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. She also held a long sword in her hand. This was the 8 Dragons' divine sword. In the end, List did not wear this sword but gave it to Achi to use. The reason was very simple. The 8 Dragons' divine sword was not so much a sword but a magic staff. It was originally the weapon of the ancient magic shooters, and it had a strong enhancement to the 8 attributes of magic. In Achi's hands, the 8 Dragons' divine sword could be maximized. He himself rode a dragon to fight, and with the dragon spear as a means of attack, it was easier for him to become one with the dragon. Brother, with the magic enhancement of the 8 Dragons' divine sword, the power of Achi's water and ice magic will be even greater. It will definitely reach the level of supreme magic, and it will also cause great damage to the Dragon Knight. Achi felt the enhancement of the 8 Dragons' divine sword to her elemental incarnation and said confidently. The little siren who was chased by the young 6-headed king sea serpent, Tulamikita, and hid by the reef and cried silently, had become a confident great magic shooter who stood at the peak of magic. There was no longer a trace of timidity. But you still have to focus on support. Don't rashly participate in the battle of the Dragon Knight. After all, you haven't invested much in magic development, and your fighting methods are not rich enough. List reminded. Achi's water elemental incarnation had developed 3 super magic chainsaw super high-pressure water knife, spiral super high-pressure water drill, and centrifugal water molecular shield. The ice elemental incarnation had only developed 1 super magic super compressed ice shield. It was to compress ice infinitely into a shield. It was not very technical, but the defense of the shield was very strong. Especially in terms of physical attack defense, it was the best of all defensive spells. Space Elemental Incarnation. He had only just perfectly grasped it, but he had barely managed to develop a super spell, Vector Slash. This spell was developed by imitating the invisible dragon's dragon breath, which used the method of cutting through space to deal damage. Apart from that, there was also the basic super spell, Eye of Magic. Achi knows how to protect herself. Don't worry, big brother. During the battle, Achi will cast a water shield and an ice shield for Big Brother and Bart. I won't let the Dragon Knight hurt you. Then Achi will use advanced magic to create a battlefield and wait for the right opportunity to attack the Dragon Knight. List smiled as he used the head-touching killer. He was not afraid of touching Achi until she went bald. Let's go, let's fight. The serfs working on the Dodo Island didn't know that an unprecedented dragon-slaying battle was about to take place. They were busy building the town's foundation. Their lord had already risen into the sky on the dragon, flying above the material boundary, constantly patrolling the waters around the Dodo Island, trying to discover the invading Dragon Knight in advance. It was unknown what principle of sensing was used between dragons. Even if it hid in the material boundary, the invisible dragon would still be sensed by other dragons at close range, but the distance of being sensed would be shortened. This greatly reduced its sneak attack ability. Otherwise, List would have already made his move. I expected that the Eagle Kingdom's means of attack would be an encirclement, so I intend to find a path first and see if I can kill the other party in a short time, he said to Achi. Before his voice fell, his heart suddenly thumped. The invisible dragon had already sensed the dragon's magic aura. It was right in front of the sea, flying in the direction of the Dodo Island. Let's go. List was not a hesitant person. When he discovered the enemy, he immediately communicated with Bart to rush toward the opponent. Flying like a flash in the blink of an eye, the dragon's perception became clearer and clearer. The other party had probably also sensed the invisible dragon. But this did not stop List's enterprising spirit. Suddenly, in the vision of the crystal white orbit, a bright magic color suddenly appeared. It was the light of magic retroaction, like a metallic copper luster, and also flashing a faint purple. Purple Copper Dragon Knight, Lure Purple Copper. He had already recognized the identity of the other party. At this time, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight's flying speed was not fast, and its posture had begun to adopt a defensive posture, and it looked around nervously. It should have sensed the dragon, but it could not capture the dragon in its vision, which made it puzzled. It did not capture the figure and aura of other dragons around it. In other words, Lure was acting alone. With such a heaven-sent opportunity, how could List give up? Go 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 spiral maneuver charge. The human and the dragon's mind were in harmony, and each had only one thought, and that was to attack. Instead of taking the usual straight line, he adopted a spiral sprint to blur his position in the dragon's perception. The distance was shortened bit by bit, and the perception between the dragons had become extremely profound. The Purple Copper Dragon Knight in the crystal white orbit, and the subtle flow of magic, were all imprinted into List's mind. This was undoubtedly revealing to him the Purple Copper Dragon Knight's next move. He's circulating a lot of mana. This means that he's prepared for a thunderous strike. Looks like Lure isn't as nervous as he appears. As expected of a rare dark element Dragon Knight. His pretentious methods are very compatible with combat aura. Unfortunately, you've met me. Lure's information quickly flashed in his mind. The dark attribute Dragon Knight's chi was full of corrosive and sticky properties, and it could not be dispelled like venom. Once hit, the dark attribute chi would be like maggots attached to the bone, causing continuous damage. But no matter how strange it was still a physical attack. For the invisible dragon that could enter the material boundary at will, it was not much of a threat. The fury of thunder was raised, and one dragon and one human advanced in the spiral. Chi and magic constantly resonated and accumulated, and the move, Ghost, was ready to be launched. Close. They were about to make contact. At this time, List could see the coldness in Lure's eyes, as if he had already expected this sudden attack. Without waiting for List to stab with the dragon's spear, Lure waved the dragon's spear in his hand. It was a long spear that was as black as ink, black from head to tail. Go to hell. Lure roared, and the dragon's spear pierced the air without making any sound, as if even sound was corroded by the dark attribute chi. In the face of this spear containing the violent power of death, List just glanced at it faintly. One human and one dragon had already flashed away from the attack path, arriving at the back of the purple copper dragon knight. The fury of thunder stabbed out. Go strike. A light touch. Blood light bloomed like a rose. Roar. The purple copper dragon let out a miserable roar, and the tip of the fury of thunder's spear cut open a huge gash on the dragon's spine, so deep that bones could be seen. Dragon blood spurted out, flying over the sea. The 35 meters long and 35 meters wingspan purple copper dragon was much larger than the 15 meters long and 15 meters wingspan invisible dragon, but it was the purple copper dragon that was injured. Most of the time, body shape was not the standard of combat power. Lure's face instantly turned purplish red, and his eyes spewed fire as he roared, "Impudent!" The pitch-black dragon spear directly moved, fiercely smashing toward the exposed invisible dragon. Dark attribute magic bloomed and circles of black fluctuations flickered, but what it smashed was an afterimage. Chapter 874. Turn around. Dick. List rode the invisible dragon bard, and after Lure's angry attack, he flashed in front of the purple copper dragon again. Wrath of thunder, wrapped in the invisible dragon's magic power and his own chi, violently poured out at the tip of the spear and fiercely performed the move Sonic Boom. The tip of the spear did not produce a real sonic boom, but it bloomed a flower of blood on the purple copper dragon's neck. Otherwise, it would have pierced through the purple copper dragon's neck. At the same time, Bard suddenly turned his head and took advantage of the process of brushing shoulders to spit out a dragon's breath on the purple copper dragon's face. The white mist that could cut through space was like a knife hitting the fine scales on the purple copper dragon's face, making crackling sounds like beans being fried. Achi also took advantage of the opportunity to attack. She grabbed List's armor with one hand and held the 8 Dragons' divine sword with the other, gently waving it. A super spell vector cut hit the purple copper dragon knight Lure. Compared to the huge purple copper dragon, attacking the dragon knight was obviously more effective. However, the location of the dragon tooth terrace itself was very hidden and could shelter the knight very well. When the vector cut was about to hit Lure, a purple metallic luster flashed, and Lure's whole body was plated with a layer of metallic copper. Bang clang. The sound of metal cutting drowned out the sound of the beans being fried. At the critical moment, the purple copper dragon also stirred up its magic power and plated the surface of its body with a layer of metallic copper, just in time to stop the violent blow from the invisible dragon knight. The 2 dragons flashed past each other. Once again, the purple copper dragon was injured. However, the purple copper dragon was strong, had rough skin and thick flesh, and could also be plated with metallic copper for defense. After passing by, it endured the severe pain of the wound, turned its head, and spat out a metallic torrent of dragon breath at the place where the invisible dragon had escaped into the material boundary. Dragon breath was a special kind of magic product. The dragon breath of different dragons was completely different. The fire dragon was a high-temperature flame, the light green gem dragon was a hail-like flow of crystal particles, and the invisible dragon was a mist that shattered space. The purple copper dragon's dragon breath was a metallic torrent, a special metal liquid formed in the form of magic power, and it was full of impact. After coming into contact with the air, it quickly turned into droplet-shaped metallic copper and shot out faster than bullets. Shio 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 shio. The densely packed sound of bullets piercing through the air was like a swarm of wasps flying past. The buzzing irritated his ears to the point of numbness. However, the torrent of metal turned into a rain of metal bullets, still unable to attack the invisible dragon knight that escaped into the material boundary. Lloyd's counterattack with his dragon spear also missed. Damn it. His temper seemed to have been ignited, but his eyes became even colder. He didn't think too much about how the fire dragon knight that he was supposed to face turned into the elusive dragon knight. He only concentrated on searching for traces of the invisible dragon and looking for a way to deal with it. He was confident in his own strength. As long as I catch you, I'll send you back to the Dragon Valley in one strike. However, before he could vent his emotions, the invisible dragon once again appeared behind the purple copper dragon through a spiral maneuver. The fury of thunder stabbed crazily. This was the poison dragon move. It used the power of drilling as the main form of expression. It aimed at the soft abdomen of the purple copper dragon and launched a series of fierce attacks. The invisible dragon took the opportunity to spit out a dragon breath that shattered the air and sprayed it toward the dragon's abdomen. Achi adopted another attack method, switching to the super magic, chainsaw super high-pressure water knife. A huge crystal white water knife suddenly condensed in the vast sky and slashed down at the purple copper dragon. Roar. The purple copper dragon's reaction could not be said to be slow, but it was still impossible to guard against. When the poison dragon had already pierced its lower abdomen, it panicked and plated copper on the surface of its body. Unfortunately, at this moment, the tip of the Fury of Thunder's spear had already burst into a flower of blood, and it constantly drilled inwards until it was blocked. It was such a delay, but Lloyd sneered, "Caught you." He raised the black dragon's spear in his hand high, and the purple copper dragon skillfully turned around, forming a situation where the invisible dragon was above and below. Then the black dragon's spear stabbed out from the gap between its wings. At this time, a magic fluctuation that made Lloyd's heart palpitate suddenly came from behind. He didn't pay attention to what was happening behind him and just continued to stab with the black dragon's spear. He wanted to kill List first. Just as the black dragon spear was about to hit the invisible dragon and had not had time to escape into the material boundary, a bright white light suddenly appeared, and the air quickly froze and condensed into a glittering transparent shield. Boom. The ice shield only blocked for a second before it was shattered under the powerful attack of the black dragon spear. But in this second, the invisible dragon had already escaped into the material boundary again. A chi who was on its back raised the 8 dragons' divine sword high, and the originally gray blade flickered with a bright blue and white light. That was the amplification of water and ice magic, which was activated. She was not arrogant when she said that she wanted to protect List. She had perfect mastery of elemental incarnation, and her super magic was also instantaneous. The high mages were able to rule the world in ancient times, and it was not a joke. Their confidence came from absorbing the powerful magic power of the weave. Lloyd couldn't believe that he was actually blocked by an ice shield. His attack was once again useless, and the sense of crisis behind him was getting heavier and heavier. The next moment, there was no time to react. A scorching air current descended, and it was as if it had taken a magma bath in an instant. The scales of the purple copper dragon were almost melted by the high temperature. Then a huge weight slammed into the purple copper dragon, causing its body to tumble. It was unable to fly steadily, and it fell down in a free-fall trajectory. "Good job, Leo." List laughed. As early as the invisible dragon appeared, he released the little fire dragon Leo. He was the main attacker, and Leo took advantage of the situation to launch a sneak attack. At this moment, Leo's performance was perfect, and the results were very gratifying. How could the purple copper dragon, which had lost its stability, avoid the powerful sneak attack of the invisible dragon knight? Bard rushed out of the material boundary and went straight to the purple copper dragon. The Fury of Thunder roared again, and it ruthlessly struck the snow mountain again. It was like a landslide, and it exploded on the purple copper dragon's shoulder blade, directly damaging one of its wings and making it even more difficult to maintain its balance. "Charge. Bard. Leo. Gee. Get rid of it." Once in a fighting state, List quickly turned into a violent output stream. He didn't know what was roundabout and what was holding back, and he just did it. Leo kept colliding with the purple copper dragon, and Bard kept flashing. He held the dragon spear and stabbed with all kinds of stabs. A chi released water and ice shields for Leo and Bard from time to time, protecting them from the occasional counterattack of the purple copper dragon knight. She also took the time to release vector cuts or high-pressure water knives and water drills. In the next few minutes, List, Bard, Leo, a chi, 2 people and 2 dragons madly besieged the purple copper dragon knight. From a height of 4,000 meters, the purple copper dragon knight was beaten to a height of several hundred meters, and it was still beating down. Even though the purple copper dragon was constantly gilding it and lure, it still couldn't withstand the damage. Along the way there was constant bleeding and screams. The metal dragon's powerful defense could only ensure that it wouldn't be seriously injured, but it couldn't guarantee that it would struggle and escape, especially when it fell to a height of 100 meters. The originally calm sea water, under the control of a chi's talent, instantly seemed to wake up giant pythons. Countless water tornadoes roared and rushed into the sky, tightly wrapping around the purple copper dragon. It restrained its last struggle, and it could only rely on the copper to protect itself. At this moment, Lure, you're dead. List held the dragon's spear, Thunder Fury, with both hands and used the move with the strongest instantaneous explosive power, Sonic Boom. Stop. There was a deafening roar in the distance, but a new dragon knight rushed over. It was a huge gray dragon that looked like it was cast from steel. Its wings covered the sky and shone with a metallic brilliance. The White Iron Dragon Knight, Alex White Iron, had arrived. However, his shout did not have any deterrent effect. List's hand didn't shake at all, and thunder fury stabbed the copper-plated lure. The defense of the copper was strong, but the impact of thunder fury was even stronger. The tip of the spear constantly bloomed with mixed fire and spatial magic, burning, tearing, and forcibly breaking the copper. Pucci. Human blood splattered. Lure, who had just heaved a sigh of relief because of Alex's arrival, had already been pierced through the chest by the dragon spear. Violent magic poured out in an instant, wreaking havoc in his chest. Under the gaze of the crystal white orbit vision, Lure's dark magic could no longer be maintained, and it started to dissipate. He was dead. After Carl Violet, he became the second Dragon Knight to die in List's hands. The dignified ruler of a country, the Grand Duke of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy, had fallen in a dragon-slaying battle that no one was watching. After killing Lure, List didn't stop, and he quickly summoned Leo to transform into his magic form, and he attached it to his chest. Then he controlled the invisible dragon Bard, and released the purple copper dragon whose body was constantly strengthening and could no longer cause damage. He quietly escaped into the material boundary and retreated into the distance. This burst of power consumed a lot of energy. Chapter 875. This chapter is My Horse Feeds the Sheep. Bang bang. The purple copper dragon fell into the sea and gulped down a few mouthfuls of salty water. After the surface of its body was covered with copper, it struggled to fly up from the sea. In order to come to the sea for the dragon-slaying battle, these dragons had learned basic swimming. Except for the fire elemental dragon like the fire dragon, the other dragons could probably learn to swim. On its dragon tooth platform, Lure had not been freed from the copper state. He was still plated with a layer of purple metal copper. He held the black dragon spear in his hand and maintained his posture when he was alive. He was already dead. There was no longer any vitality. However, the purple copper dragon did not give up on him. It just flew into the sky with a sad expression and met up with the white iron dragon knight. It let out a loud roar. Lure. Alex approached the purple copper dragon and shouted. There was no response. Alex was startled. He thought of a very bad situation. And he saw with his own eyes that the transparent crystal-like dragon thrust a dragon spear from its back and pierced Lure's chest. In a very short time, it pulled out the dragon spear and disappeared without a trace. Lure. He called again, but there was still no response. Roar. The purple copper dragon's roar was full of desolation, which made Alex understand that Lure was already dead. Although it was unbelievable, it was the truth. Impossible. Alex's face was gloomy, and he was extremely angry. He and Lure were the Prince of the Eagle Kingdom and the Grand Duke of the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. They had known each other since childhood. They had also been selected for the Dragon Knight candidate program of the Eagle Kingdom, but Lure inherited the Purple Copper family's dragon. There may have been some stumbles, but friendship was also established. Moreover, the relationship between the two countries had always been very good. This time they responded to the dragon-slaying battle together. They even drank and chatted happily yesterday. Today was an eternal farewell. Suppressing his sadness and anger, Alex shouted coldly, "Purple Copper Dragon, follow me and avenge Lure. After I kill that despicable beast, List, I will personally send Lure's body back to the Purple Copper Grand Duchy." The Purple Copper Dragon's body was full of wounds. The originally beautiful purple metal scales were mostly rotten. Some were shredded by the dragon breath, some were burned by the high-temperature dragon breath, some were torn apart by the dragon spear, and some were damaged by the magic water blades and water drills. His wounds were no longer bleeding, and his muscles were slowly healing. His powerful regenerative abilities were on full display. However, it had used up a lot of its magic power, especially those special dragon supreme demons. They had been heavily damaged by the repeated copper plating, causing its combat power to plummet. Only his spirit was excited, wanting to avenge his knight. Unlike the light green sapphire dragon knight Carl Low Violet, the light green sapphire dragon was a dragon raised by the Eagle royal family. Carl Low was only a chosen knight and had nothing to do with the first-generation dragon knight. On the other hand, the copper dragon knight Lure was a descendant of the first-generation dragon knight and had a close relationship with the dragon. However, at this moment, Alex and the three-headed dragon searched everywhere, but they couldn't find any trace of List. The three-headed dragon could vaguely sense the invisible dragon's aura, but the distance between the auras had already become far, making it impossible to clearly determine its position. It could only vaguely sense a direction. He went that way, it's the Dodo Island. Alonso's direction, let's chase after him. Alex's eyes flashed, realizing List's plan. He was addicted to killing the lone Dragon Knight, and he still wanted to intercept and kill the Bronze Dragon Knight. However, not only was Alex not nervous, he felt that this was a godsend opportunity, because Alonso wasn't acting alone. There was also a gray iron dragon following him. There were many types of iron dragons, and according to the type of iron ore they produced, they could be divided into 5 types: white iron dragon, mash iron dragon, gray iron dragon, white iron dragon, and black iron dragon. Their combat power was very strong, and they were the strongest among the metal dragons. Especially in terms of body size, they were usually more than 60 meters long. The Dodo Island was in sight. It would be impossible for Alonso Immortal to say that he wasn't proud. Under his plan, List had already become a turtle in a jar, and he was only waiting for the old hunter to personally come and capture him. But he soon discovered that something was wrong. According to the plan, he would be the second to arrive at the Dodo Island and join the battle, but there was no dragon-slaying battle on the Dodo Island. Everything on the island was very calm, except for a group of serfs who were working, who suddenly pointed to the sky and exclaimed. They saw the bronze dragon and gray iron dragon getting closer and closer. Even though they had seen the Sir Lord's fire dragon, the serfs were still scared by the 2 metal dragons. They couldn't help but want to kneel down. The metal dragons in the sky didn't care about them. Alonso's eyes kept searching, and he determined that there were no traces of dragons on the Dodo Island. List is not here? Could it be that after seeing Prince Alex he fled? According to the plan, Alex would first launch a surprise attack with the white iron dragon and the silver dragon, and when the battle was in full swing he would appear. When List wanted to escape, Grand Duke Lure would join in the encirclement. He didn't expect that there would be an accident in the plan. At this moment he suddenly received a wave of dragon magic. It was the magic wave emitted by the white iron dragon. The wave was reminding him of danger, and asking him to immediately converge in the direction of the white iron dragon. This was a simple way of long-distance communication between Dragon Knight. As long as they were within the range of the dragon's perception, they could communicate in this way. Alonso frowned. He couldn't understand why Alex would remind him of danger. Is there any danger in killing List? Even if he has an underage fire dragon, an ordinary light green gemstone dragon, and a newly promoted magic shooter, what can he do? His heart was still relaxed. But he didn't hesitate in his movements. He quickly drove the bronze dragon to fly in the direction of the white iron dragon, and the gray iron dragon followed closely behind. The flight didn't take long. He felt a new dragon's aura, although it was not the same as the fire dragon's aura he felt in the last dragon-slaying battle, and it was not the aura of the light green gemstone dragon. But he knew that this was the arrival of List. Come on. Alonso's spirit was lifted, and he quickly rushed over. The distance between them continued to shrink, but when the bronze dragon sensed that the other was in front of him, there was no trace of the dragon in his vision. Even when he flew down from the clouds he still couldn't find the other. There was no fire dragon and no light green gemstone dragon. Even when the bronze dragon kept reminding him that he was within a kilometer, there was still no trace of the other. What's going on? Why can't I see him? Alonso raised his eyebrows, vaguely understanding the meaning of danger from Alex. Then he had a flash of inspiration. Is this an invisibility spell created by magic shooters? What a joke. I've already locked on to your position, to the left. He shook the dragon spear and became one with the dragon. He faced the bronze dragon valiantly and charged at the position he sensed. The dragon spear was wrapped in the power of wind and thunder, and it made an ear-piercing sonic boom. But just when he felt that he was about to hit the other, the bronze dragon suddenly felt the other's aura appear behind him. Before he could react and was ready to turn around to dodge the sneak attack, the silhouette of a transparent crystal-like dragon suddenly appeared and charged forward. The dragon spear blossomed with a murderous aura, as if it wanted to stab the bronze dragon to death. Roar! Wuxia. Just when the 2 dragons were about to cross paths, an accident happened. A violent aura crashed over from the side, directly forcing the invisible dragon to turn around and give up this opportunity to severely injure the bronze dragon. Roar! A wild and insufferably arrogant dragon roar rolled between heaven and earth. It was the gray iron dragon that followed closely behind the bronze dragon. It raised its 60-meter-wide wingspan and fiercely pounced at the invisible dragon with the posture of a top predator. The airflow stirred up by the wings could be seen with the naked eye. Wisps of mist were emitted. Even the sunlight was covered. The invisible dragon with a wingspan of only 15 meters was several times smaller than the bronze dragon with a wingspan of 30 meters, not to mention the gray iron dragon with a wingspan of 60 meters. Bad luck. Riding on the back of the invisible dragon Bard, Liszt secretly frowned under the strong pressure of the gray iron dragon. Without any sloppiness, he immediately chose to give up on killing the bronze dragon knight Alonso. Then, with a flash, he escaped into the material boundary and fled into the distance. Boom. The moment he entered the material boundary, the gray iron dragon's tail, like a real dragon spear, pierced the place where the invisible dragon disappeared, leaving only air. No matter how strong the attack was, it still missed. But Liszt, who was hiding in the material boundary, felt his scalp go slightly numb. He clearly felt that the tip of the gray iron dragon's tail was just a little short of piercing through the material boundary and stabbing him and the invisible dragon. That was a kind of violent attack that relied purely on physical strength to forcibly break the material space. The adult gray iron dragon was at its peak, and it probably had the strength to fight against an adult elemental dragon. The crystal white track was activated. Chapter 876. The Bronze Dragon Knight, Alonso Cassiopeia, escaped death. Not long after, they met up with Alex Petrichles. However, the original 5 dragons and 3 knight were now reduced to 5 dragons, 2 knight, and a corpse. Prince Alex, how did things turn out like this? Alonso was still in shock. Is that Liszt? His mount is not a fire dragon or a light green gem dragon. It's an invisible dragon. Alex was expressionless, as if he was talking about an irrelevant matter. The Holy Dragon sequence has the power to represent space. Liszt is far more than the fire dragon knight we expected, and he obtained the light green gem dragon. He has become an invisible dragon knight. Luer died under his assassination. Does the Holy Dragon really exist? Alonso frowned. I wasn't sure before. I haven't heard any news about the Holy Dragon for many years. When I was young, I traveled the Noble Frost Empire and heard some news about the Holy Dragon. I thought that the Holy Dragon had become a thing of the past with the fall of the Moon Empire. I didn't expect it to be born again in the Azure Wave Sea. There is also a High Mage which has not been born for many years. Prince Alex, things have gone beyond our expectations. Alonso took a deep breath and speculated seriously. I suspect that Liszt has mastered the ruins of the Moon Empire. Otherwise, the High Mage and the Invisible Dragon would not be born one after another. Alex glanced at the bronze-plated corpse of Luer and said indifferently, "This little bastard has grown up. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to kill him." Alonso's face darkened, and then he raised his eyebrows. "Your Highness, do you want to give up this dragon-slaying battle? What do you think? Chase. Now that things have come to this, there is no turning back. If we can't kill Liszt, there will be endless troubles in the future. We can only continue to chase and kill him to ensure that things do not get out of control. Otherwise, it will be the most serious crisis for our Eagle Kingdom." But Liszt is an invisible dragon knight. He has the ability to travel through space. How can we kill him? Lure. Alonso seemed to have made up his mind. I will be the bait to lure him out. Doesn't he like to kill lone dragon knights? We will search separately but keep in touch at all times. Once he appears, we will immediately entangle him and leave him no place to hide. Alex's eyes flickered for a moment. Do you think there's a possibility of success? In terms of combat power, he deserved to be the best in the Eagle Kingdom, but in terms of tactics and wisdom, he was slightly worse, so he had to rely on Alonso to give advice. After seeing what happened to Grand Duke Luer, to be honest, I don't have much confidence. This list will always have trump cards that I don't know about. For now, we can only fight it out. Killing him would be the best outcome. If we can't, we can only retreat first and think of a way to resolve the crisis in the future. Then let's kill them, Alex suddenly said. As an invincible white iron dragon knight, he naturally had his own pride. In the following period of time, Alonso took the initiative to leave, wandering alone in the waters around the island, searching for traces of the invisible dragon. Alex led the 4 dragons to search in another direction, but he maintained a connection with Alonso's magical aura. He held the dragon spear in his hand. Alonso restrained his nervousness and coldly observed his surroundings. He earnestly hoped that Liszt would show up and kill him. In this case, they could use the prepared all-out attack to pin down the invisible dragon and wait for Alex's support. Only in this way could they reverse the situation. Otherwise, if he lost the second dragon-slaying battle, he would be too ashamed to show his face. It was unknown how many times a dragon knight could participate in a dragon-slaying battle in his life, but he had participated in 2 dragon-slaying battles and failed both times. He would become the laughingstock and shame of the dragon knight. At this moment, he suddenly sensed the aura of the invisible dragon coming from afar. Overjoyed, he couldn't help but tighten his grip on the dragon's spear. However, his aura quickly disappeared without a trace. It turned out that List had just flown out of the material boundary and used his binoculars to scan his surroundings. After confirming the location of the bronze dragon, he left without looking back. Knowing that I killed Lure, he still took the initiative to divide his forces. Is this a temptation or a test of my IQ? List thought that he was not a person with a high IQ, but he was definitely not a representative of a low IQ. Alonso's move was clearly a mockery of him. He turned and left. In the following period of time he would just take a walk with his dog. He had already asked Chi to inform Black Horse Island to properly transfer the elves. In fact, it didn't make much sense to transfer them. The Dragon Knight would not attack the low-level knight and civilians, let alone kill the elves. The game naturally had its rules. The Dragon Knight versus the Dragon Knight was the mainstream rule. Otherwise, your Dragon Knight would kill my people today, and my Dragon Knight would kill your people tomorrow. No one would get any benefits. Besides, compared with the Eagle Kingdom, the Flame territory was poor. Even if he was killed by the Dragon Knight, List's loss would be limited. At worst, he could go to the Eagle Kingdom to make up for it. Even if he could not make up for it, he could easily kill enough. As long as Alex and Alonso were not stupid, they would not choose to break the rules. He mainly wanted to prevent the other party from being flustered and exasperated and venting their anger on Black Horse Island. After all, they were all Dragon Knight. Who would dare to pursue the occasional brain cramp? He himself had disregarded his reputation and personally went to the battlefield to capture an ordinary knight, so he could not guarantee that the other party would not do such a thing. I hope you don't do this. Otherwise, my territory will be damaged and the Eagle Kingdom will have to compensate 10 times, 100 times. Bart, who was riding the invisible dragon, constantly shuttled through the material boundary and flew in the direction of Alex. After sensing the dragon's breath, he was shocked to find that Alex was surrounded by 4 dragons, a white iron dragon, a gray iron dragon, a purple copper dragon, and a silver dragon. Obviously, he could not approach them casually. It's a pity that they are all precious metal dragons, but they don't belong to me. List sighed. Chi suddenly said, "Brother, aren't you going to wait for the Eagle Kingdom to retreat and then intercept the lone Dragon Knight?" List shook his head. "Having said that, I'm afraid the other party will not divide their troops after I killed Lure. Even if they divide their troops, it will be to tempt me. Even if they do divide their troops after they retreat, it will be difficult for me to track them. After all, there is no positioning method, and it is difficult to clearly see the position of each dragon. Chi may have a way." Ha! List was stunned for a moment and then overjoyed. "Chi, tell me, what is the way?" "It's a magic beacon that Chi just came up with. It uses space magic to leave a mark on the dragon. At this time, the location and distance can be determined through the resonance between the material boundary and the beacon. But the resonance distance should not be far, at most 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers, this distance has exceeded the sensing limit between dragons." List thought a little and knew that this was a good opportunity. "Chi, can you distinguish between different beacons of different dragons?" "I don't think so." "Then let's go back to Black Horse Island and experiment on Leo." List decided to do it, and without any hesitation he moved directly at high speed, toward the material boundary and entered the world outside. He found the natural node of the Bone Lake, returned to the territory and flew out for a distance. After making sure that there was no one around to disturb him, he called out to Leo and asked Chi to place a beacon on Leo. This was a very small magic, and after it was released, if the invisible dragon was not sensitive to space magic, it would almost be undetectable. As for Leo, he did not know that he had been placed with a beacon. "Leo, fly forward and make sure that we are 100 kilometers apart." Roar. In this way the invisible dragon Bard went south, and the little fire dragon Leo went north, constantly flying and pulling apart the distance. After 100 kilometers, Chi had lost the sense of the space magic beacon. But unexpectedly the invisible dragon could still sense the space magic beacon. "Bard is so powerful," Chi said happily. The farther the sensing distance, the higher the success rate of tracking. When Leo and Bard were 300 kilometers apart, the beacon finally disappeared from Bard's sensing. After flying back for a moment he sensed it again. It's confirmed that the beacon limit is 300 kilometers, and the tracking plan can be carried out perfectly. List was in a good mood. The next step is to constantly tease Alex and Alonso, and then quietly place a beacon on each of their dragons. The plan was carried out perfectly according to List's ideas. He found Alonso, rushed out, and with a feint, escaped into the material boundary, then rushed out again, scared him, and escaped into the material boundary. After tossing around 3 or 4 times, he finally disguised a cheese success, placed the beacon on the bronze dragon, and then walked away without looking back. Next, he continued to target Alex and the 4 dragons, placing the beacons. It was a bit difficult, but it took some time and energy, and with the invisible dragon being scratched by Alex's attack, he finally succeeded in placing all the beacons. Let's go. List smiled and did not stay any longer. Chapter 877. This chapter is titled, Meeting You in the Deepest Part of My Life. It was already night. From the spatial magic beacon, it could be seen that all 5 dragons had returned to Hot Spring Island. He sent a message to the mages squatting on Hot Spring Island, telling the rats to keep a close eye on the food transportation on Hot Spring Island. List stopped tossing around and went straight back to Black Horse Island to rest. After a day of hard work on the sea, Bard was exhausted. He had to conserve his energy for tomorrow's events. Early the next morning, List continued to approach Hot Spring Island to monitor the 5 beacons. At the same time, he was constantly calling for smoke missions. Mission: your work and rest schedule is being spied on. The danger hiding in the shadows is approaching step by step. Even as a dragon knight, there is no guarantee that you will not be besieged. Fighting is the best solution. Please resolve the crisis in the shadows. Reward: Trace of the Ogre. The mission had not changed and the crisis in the shadows had not yet been resolved. This meant that Alex and Alonso had not given up and wanted to attack again. Therefore, List could not relax and needed to continue monitoring the 5 dragons. However, when it was almost noon, the smoke mission changed. Mission completed. Reward: Trace of the Ogre. The mission was successfully completed. After some discussion, Alex, Alonso, Piero, and the others did not want to continue and chose to give up the dragon-slaying battle. But did you ask me if you gave up? List's eyes flickered. The smoke mission also seemed to move at will, slowly changing into another paragraph of serpentines. Mission: a dragon-slaying battle was resolved by your correct response, and you achieved the shocking result of killing the Dragon Knight. However, it is better to pursue a cornered enemy than to seek fame. Why not continue to work hard and achieve more brilliant results in this dragon-slaying battle? Reward: Cannibal Trees. It is better to pursue a cornered enemy than to seek fame. This was his determination. When he noticed that the 5 dragons' beacons began to move, he quietly followed them. Along the way, these beacons did not disperse and continued to fly toward the interior of the Sapphire Islands. List kept a distance of 200 kilometers, not too far behind, waiting for the team to disperse. From afternoon to dusk, the 5 dragons finally stopped at a place and did not move. According to the map of the Sapphire Grand Duchy, and then using the sextant to determine their position, List quickly determined that they had landed on an inhabited island. It wasn't too big. It was the territory of a Viscount, Cube Island. The island lord was the Viscount of Cube Island. He followed the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, Wallace Pineapple Green. Is this a traitor, or has the 5-headed dragon not alerted the feudal lord of the island? List also found an island and quietly landed to rest. No matter what, the Viscount of Cube Island was highly suspicious of betrayal. Just as List was quietly tracking the dragon of the Eagle Kingdom. Far away on the blazing island, Emily was leading the giant elephants in orders of chivalry to start building the second road, Shui River Avenue, a road that would connect Shui Fire City and River Estuary City. The Whirlpool River was crooked and not straight. Therefore, the construction of Shui River Avenue needed to go deep into the jungle. In the past few days, the road had been built into a dense jungle. However, many serfs transporting supplies went missing on the way. Gradually, a legend about the ogres broke out among the Moonslayer serfs. The first to mention the ogres were the serfs of the River Tribe. According to the serfs of the River Tribe, they used to be a large tribe 10 years ago. It was only because they encountered the ogres that they declined to a small tribe of less than 500 people. They had no choice but to migrate to another forest that had been conquered by the night. Unexpectedly, after hiding for 10 years, the ogres appeared again. The ancient magician of the River Tribe also proved that the serfs were right. Originally, the investigation of the ogres did not fall under Emily's management. However, when they set up camp, a knight went missing, which alerted her. After a few days of close investigation, she finally found the reason for the knight's disappearance. Is it this tree? Yes, Captain. We saw it tie up the serfs as bait, and then there were other tree monsters that dismembered the serfs. Unfortunately, these tree monsters ran very fast and we only kept this one. It seemed that when it saw that it couldn't run away, it directly became motionless like this. It was a slender tree more than 3 meters tall, with not lush leaves, thin trunk and even thinner branches. Apart from that, there was not much special about it. However, the knight swore that the tree could move like a cane, pull out its roots and run on the ground. Burn it, Emily said. The torch ignited the branches and crackled, but the tree did not respond at all. It was like burning an ordinary, senseless tree. She watched the branches of the tree being burned. Her voice was childish, but her tone was mature. Interesting. Alex and Alonso's Dragon Knight team set off from Cube Island, passed through 2 deserted islands, and finally left Sapphire Archipelago 3 days later. What followed was a voyage of more than 1,000 kilometers, but soon List found that there were some deserted islands in the sea that could be stopped. It was because of these deserted islands that the Eagle Kingdom could let the Dragon Knight set foot on Sapphire Archipelago at will. With spies like the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island, they successfully launched a dragon-slaying battle with as many as 5 dragons. Unfortunately, the final result was still a failure. They haven't dispersed yet? List sat on a shell next to a huge ice floe. Bard was lying on the ice floe, chewing on a few pieces of smoke grass in displeasure. "We Bard responded, indicating that he did not feel the beacon separate. Achi, on the other hand, swam happily in the sea. She used magic to retract her cloak, and then swam freely in the sea as before, only covering the important parts with water ribbons. List's eyes followed her figure, and there was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. Then he took out a steaming cup of Bampo milk tea from his space ring and slowly tasted it. The pursuit on the sea was not hard for him. It was just a relaxing trip. After a moment, Bard stood up. He found that the beacon began to move, so List and Achi immediately set off and continued to track the beacon. After tracking for more than 100 kilometers, the eyes of the man and the dragon suddenly lit up. They felt that the 5 beacons that had been concentrated had finally dispersed, and 4 of them continued to stay the same. But another one had left the team. Who could have left? List directly gave up on the 4 concentrated beacons, rode the invisible dragon Bard, and chased after the beacon that had left the team. However, he did not rashly approach in case it was a counter-ambush. In this way they almost reached the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. The other 4 beacons had long been lost, and the 4 dragons had probably returned to the Eagle Kingdom from another direction. At this moment, List was pleasantly surprised again, because he found that the dragon that had left the team happened to fly near the Sea Demon Reefs, where there was a natural node that could allow List to directly travel through space. So what are we waiting for, Bard? Let's go. Flying at high speed, tearing the material boundary, entering the world outside the material world, and locking onto the natural node of the Sea Demon Reefs. Back to the real world. The beacon's response was 20 kilometers away, and he had already sensed the dragon's aura. Grey Iron Dragon, so it's Duke Piero of the Grey Iron Duchy. Is it going straight back to its territory? Iron Dragon. If it were Alex White Iron, I might not dare to fight, but you're just a dragon without a knight. He drew out the Thunder's Fury Dragon Spear. Chapter 878. Roar. The Grey Iron Dragon let out a dignified roar, flapped its wings and flew high into the sky. Standing on its back, the Grey Iron Duke Piero Grey Iron was somewhat puzzled. "Grey King, what's wrong?" The Grey Iron Dragon couldn't speak, nor could it communicate with Piero telepathically. It could only barely communicate through its body language and different tones of dragon roars. Fortunately, although Piero wasn't a dragon knight, he had been with the Grey Iron Dragon since childhood and understood what it meant. "You mean we are in danger? Is it the invisible dragon from before?" Piero quickly guessed the truth. The Grey Iron Dragon confirmed. Piero's complexion immediately sank. "The invisible dragon knight, List Flame, followed us all the way, and when it saw me flying alone, it wanted to kill me?" "Grey King, can you contend against the invisible dragon knight?" The Grey Iron Dragon let out a domineering response, and then opened a few scales on its back, indicating for Piero to hide under the scales. Next, it had to face the battle alone. The sky-blotting wings constantly flapped, crossing layer after layer of clouds and climbing higher into the sky. It was afraid that the seawater raised by the High Mage would trap it. A highly intelligent creature like a dragon naturally understood that the sky was its battlefield, and the higher it was, the more chances it had to win. When it climbed to an altitude of 20,000 meters, the air was already very thin. Although the gray iron dragon didn't feel any discomfort, it didn't continue to climb. Even with its dragon form, it was difficult to climb higher. Slowly hovering high in the sky, it closely perceived the invisible dragon's magic aura that was getting closer and clearer. Its body appeared strong and powerful, and its iron-gray scales reflected the sunlight, giving it a natural metallic coldness. Its tail was slender relative to its body, and it was constantly swinging behind it. The tip of its tail was slightly protruding, like a curved dragon spear, ready to attack at any time. However, what made the gray iron dragon uneasy was that it could clearly feel the invisible dragon's magic aura, but it couldn't lock onto its position. Sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes front, sometimes back, sometimes up, sometimes down, making it feel that it wasn't facing a single dragon, but that there were countless dragons hiding in the surroundings. Of course, the gray-mouthed iron dragon knew that the other side was not only the invisible dragon knight, but also a fire dragon that could appear at any time, as well as a very powerful high mage. In order to avoid the high mage's attack, it had climbed to an altitude of 20,000 meters. Roar, roar, roar. As time ticked by, the invisible dragon still hadn't appeared. The gray-mouthed iron dragon was already restless. Even Duke Piero, who was hiding under its scales, felt extremely uncomfortable. The thin air here made it difficult for him to breathe. If this continued, he might become the first monarch to die from suffocation. But the invisible dragon did not appear. He just kept changing his position, provoking the gray-mouthed iron dragon's willpower. Occasionally it would disappear for a moment, and when the gray-mouthed iron dragon wanted to retreat, the magical aura would slowly approach, and the invisible dragon would once again tease its surroundings. The whole process repeated over and over again for 2 hours. He couldn't help but beg the gray iron dragon, "Gray King, I'm about to suffocate to death. Let's quickly retreat to the coastline." The gray-mouthed iron dragon was unwilling and ignored Piero. Thus, after another hour, when Piero fainted due to lack of oxygen, the gray-mouthed iron dragon was still in formation in the sky. But at this time, although Piero didn't continue to be noisy, its willpower had already reached the limit of endurance. Facing danger for a full 3 hours, its nerves were stretched taut, and its body didn't get any rest, so it could no longer maintain its state. Its state suddenly collapsed. With a violent dragon roar, the gray-mouthed iron dragon flapped its wings and flew toward the coastline without looking back. But just as it couldn't help but turn around to escape, the invisible dragon that had been secretly teasing it finally appeared. Liszt, who had long been ready, held Thunder's fury, poured all his berserk magic power and chi into the tip of the dragon's spear, and fiercely attacked with Snow Mountain. The gray-mouthed iron dragon's reaction could not be said to be slow, but after all, its state had collapsed once and its tail was a bit slower. It brushed past the invisible dragon's body, and then it felt a stinging pain on its upper thigh. Thunder's Fury's berserk attack had already solidly hit it. Breaking the incomparably hard steel-like scales, scorching chi and cutting magic power frantically exploded, mincing several important muscles at the base of its thigh. Without waiting for the gray-mouthed iron dragon to turn around and counterattack, Liszt pulled out Thunder's Fury and had a chi throw out an ice shield to block it. He then rode the invisible dragon Bard and escaped into the material boundary again. The gray-mouthed iron dragon turned around and bit. It spat out a torrent of metal dragon breath, which turned into countless blades and shattered the ice shield, but couldn't harm the invisible dragon in the slightest. The gray-mouthed iron dragon operated its magic power, solidifying the wound at the base of its thigh, and its scales stood up, arming itself into the image of a steel hedgehog. The iron dragon wouldn't be in a copper-plated state like the copper dragon. It could only erect its scales to form a hedgehog formation to protect its own safety. But this was doomed to be a futile attempt. The scales obstructed the passage of air, greatly reducing its flying speed. So the invisible dragon rushed out from time to time, thrusting its spear and escaping into the material boundary. Every time it thrusted its spear, the gray-mouthed iron dragon would inevitably burst into dragon blood. Roar, roar, roar. The gray-mouthed iron dragon was extremely annoyed. What made it even more afraid was that its state was getting weaker and weaker, so its desire to escape was getting more and more dominant. Sometimes, it would take a critical hit from Liszt's spear and fly forward with all its might. It felt as if it could reach land after flying for a while and then it would be safe. However, List, who was chasing behind it, laughed proudly. Your mentality has collapsed. At this time and in this state, turning around and counterattacking can still cause serious damage to me. Apart from that, you can't escape. Compared to the invisible dragon, the gray-mouthed iron dragon was still a bit lacking. The dragon's spear danced and its chi raged. List demonstrated and verified all of his ideas about the invisible dragon knight, Dragon Chi secret manual, during the pursuit. Ghost, erase, shadow, lift, snow mountain, collapse, sonic boom, stab, poison dragon drill, as well as some new ideas that had just been formed and had yet to be polished were all put to use. Bard was equally excited. His body was slender, but he chased after the huge gray-mouthed iron dragon. This contrast in strength made him excited. He didn't even need to use the dragon's breath to shatter the sky. He directly used his claws to leave marks on the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Dragon's breath was closely related to the dragon's supreme magic. So, List's dragon spear and fighting technique, Bard's dragon claws and bite, and Achi's ice shield and water blade constantly caused damage to the gray-mouthed iron dragon. The whole process was even easier than killing the purple copper dragon knight lure in a hurry, because there was a very quiet output environment throughout. No dragon knight could come to support the gray-mouthed iron dragon in a short time. One chased and one fled. Blood spurted all the way. After chasing for dozens of kilometers in a flash, the gray-mouthed iron dragon finally saw the coastline of the Eagle Kingdom. It gathered all its strength, endured the pain all over its body, and wanted to return to land in one go. Roar, roar, roar. As long as it landed, there was hope for a comeback. But reality wouldn't let it get what it wanted. List appeared again and the dragon's spear hit its body fiercely. Bard also spat out a reluctant dragon's breath to shatter the sky, constantly cutting its scales. Achi's vector cut and high-pressure water blade were released at the same time, once again breaking its broken scales. What made the gray-mouthed iron dragon most desperate was that a ball of flame bloomed in front of it, turning into a fire dragon with a wingspan of nearly 30 meters and black and red scales all over its body. Under the fire dragon's ferocious dragon horns and twisted facial scales was a pair of infinitely evil scarlet eyes. As if looking straight at death. Without any extra movements, the fire dragon collided with the gray-mouthed iron dragon fiercely. For a moment, both dragons made the sound of bones breaking, both lost their balance and fell into the sea. However, the fire dragon Leo had enough time to regain its balance, while the gray-mouthed iron dragon faced the storm-like attacks of List, Bard, and Achi. Kill him while he's down. This was List's consistent life motto. Usually he liked to hide, but when it came to battle he turned into an African brother flathead, indifferent to life and death. Moreover, how could he not seize the opportunity to beat a drowning dog? Chapter 879. There was no reversal in the situation. Another unknown dragon-slaying battle slowly came to an end. The seriously injured gray-mouthed iron dragon could no longer control its body. It swayed and slid towards the sea, its body covered with countless wounds. No one could provide it with supplies. Compared to List, who constantly provided potions to the invisible dragon, its treatment was very miserable, and the result was also miserable. When it fell to the sea, the gray-mouthed iron dragon was completely unable to struggle and could only let Achi bind it with seawater, weakly gasping for breath. It really wasn't easy. List conveniently threw a few potions into the mouth of the invisible dragon, and then had Bard grab the gray-mouthed iron dragon by its tail and drag it up. It flew towards several reef islands not far away. Thump. The huge body of the gray-mouthed iron dragon was thrown on the reef, lightly soaking in the seawater. The waterspout controlled by Achi was still entangling it, preventing it from suddenly attacking people. For creatures like dragons, they could not relax under any circumstances. The temporary weakness might be accumulating the next wave of strength. Roar. The little fire dragon Leo landed on another reef, full of vigor. He was very proud of his final fatal blow to the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Fire dragons were naturally belligerent, and one could imagine his mood after defeating the adult gray-mouthed iron dragon, which was larger than him. The invisible dragon was the proudest one. The successive victories in the dragon-slaying battle were all due to its innate ability. However, it did not show off like Leo. It just quietly waited beside List, watching List jump onto the gray-mouthed iron dragon, plotting against the steel dragon. Achi smiled slightly, also happy to keep the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Sirens also liked dragons, and the more dragons around List, the happier she would be. As for List himself, he was walking along the steel scales towards the gray-mouthed iron dragon's dragon tooth platform. Now that the gray-mouthed iron dragon had been completely defeated and bound, the next step was naturally to forcefully ride it. He would turn the gray-mouthed iron dragon into his fourth dragon, increasing the iron resources of the territory. The value of iron ore was not much lower than gold and silver. It was especially important to the country. Moreover, the battle strength of an adult iron dragon was also what List urgently needed at present. Once he had an iron dragon, he would be able to face the dragon-slaying battle head-on, and wouldn't need to rely on the young invisible dragon and fire dragon to launch sneak attacks. Just as he reached the back of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, he suddenly discovered a few bulging scales. Through the gaps he could see a person lying inside. He couldn't help but pry open the scales and see the person lying inside. He was dressed in gorgeous armor and didn't move at all. His face was green, his lips purple, and he was barely breathing. This person should be the Grey Iron Duke, Piero Grey Iron, right? List pulled him up and checked his breathing. It was as if he saw a pile of dragon coins waving at him. If they didn't bring over a dragon elf, they wouldn't be able to redeem a duke. Grabbing the unconscious Duke Piero, List locked him up with chi restraining shackles and threw him at a chi's feet. A chi, look after him. This is a big shot who can be exchanged for a dragon elf. Dragon elf? Great. A chi cheered. She had wanted to study dragon elves for a long time. Piero was just an accident. List continued to climb the gray-mouthed iron dragon's body and found the location of the dragon tooth platform. However, the dragon tooth platform was surrounded by steel scales. It was tightly sealed and couldn't be opened. List couldn't help but walk up to the gray-mouthed iron dragon's head. He looked down at the gray-mouthed iron dragon's eyes that were filled with unwillingness. Gray-mouthed iron dragon, you should be able to understand my wind language. Open the dragon tooth platform and become my dragon. Snort. The gray-mouthed iron dragon snorted hot air from its nostrils and responded with a disdainful expression. Do you want me to kill you? List glared and shouted. He didn't expect the gray-mouthed iron dragon to still not yield even at this juncture. He was still disdainful. Brr. The gray-mouthed iron dragon let out a roar as if it was saying it wouldn't yield even if it died. List shouted and asked several times, but he couldn't change its attitude. It definitely wouldn't open the dragon tooth platform. In a fit of anger, he walked over to the dragon tooth platform and tried to forcefully cut off the scales and mount it. However, the scales on the dragon tooth platform were too hard. The Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword created a lot of sparks from the friction, but it still couldn't open a gap. After struggling for a while, the sky gradually darkened. There was still no way to open the scales on the dragon tooth platform. He had Bart and Leo come over and tear at the scales until they were bloody, but they still couldn't find the closed dragon tooth platform. The gray-mouthed iron dragon's eyes were filled with determination. It was a kind of silent, unyielding will to die. Moreover, it held a strong hostility, allowing the blood to flow and death to approach. Dragons were proud by nature. Very few would yield after being beaten. The gray-mouthed iron dragon was the same. List could see from its eyes that things couldn't be done. If he wanted to force himself on it, he would have to knock it out. However, the gray-mouthed iron dragon's willpower was astonishing. Even if he really rode it, it would be very difficult to defeat a dragon with a will to die. After a quarter of an hour of silence. Gray-mouthed iron dragon, I appreciate your tenacity, but do you think that I can't make you yield and become my dragon? He looked straight into the gray-mouthed iron dragon's cold eyes. I originally just wanted to save a little resources, but now I've decided to spend resources for you. Saying so, he took out a 7-colored fruit from his space ring. You are worth a bewildering dragon soul fruit. Leo Bart opened the gray-mouthed iron dragon's mouth. Wuxia. The invisible dragon glanced at List with a meaningful look in its eyes. It had seen List wrap the bewildering dragon soul fruit in roast beef and bring it to its mouth. Leo looked at the bewildering dragon soul fruit, feeling a sense of déjà vu. However, it didn't think too much about it. Under the condition that List promised to provide it with double the potion for 3 months, it excitedly used its dragon claws to forcibly open the gray-mouthed iron dragon's tightly clenched teeth with Bart. List raised his hand and the fruit fell. A bewildering dragon soul fruit fell down the gray-mouthed iron dragon's throat. Then he commanded Bart and Leo to close the gray-mouthed iron dragon's mouth so that it couldn't vomit out the bewildering dragon soul fruit. After waiting for a moment, the gray-mouthed iron dragon's eyelids started to become heavy, and then its eyes gradually became confused. This was a sign of dozing off. After another moment, the gray-mouthed iron dragon, which was full of vigor just a moment ago, directly closed its eyes and let out muffled snores. At the place where its neck and body were connected, a few bloody steel scales slowly unfolded, revealing the dragon tooth platform wrapped inside. The stars twinkled in the dark night. List's calm heart quickly became hot. He stepped into the deep bone gap of the dragon tooth platform and sat down. Boom. At that moment the world changed. He entered the gray-mouthed iron dragon's mind world, a very strange place. It was similar to a blacksmith's shop, but it used the volcano as the boiler and the mountain rock as the chopping board. A young iron dragon held a huge hammer and hammered the red-hot iron. Opposite the dragon was the figure of a tall knight, waving a small hammer to guide it. Clang. The small hammer hit the chopping board. Bang bang. The big hammer hit the red-hot iron. However, this scene didn't last long. With List's arrival, the young iron dragon fainted on the ground, and a rainbow-colored chain wrapped around it. The knight on the other side suddenly turned his head. This was a middle-aged man with regular features. At this moment he was staring coldly at List. With a clang he pulled out the knight longsword that he carried with him. However, just as he was about to attack, the rainbow-colored chain wrapped around his body, restricting all his subsequent movements. He could only watch as List used a cloud of smoke to condense a fiery red dragon bone longsword and walked toward him unhurriedly. The first-generation Dragon Knight's mind brand? List chuckled. Chapter 880. The corpse disappeared, and the figure of the first-generation Dragon Knight appeared in the blacksmith shop again, still entangled by the colorful chain. So List continued to slash, constantly splitting the Iron Knight into too many times. Although a new first-generation Dragon Knight was born every time, the figure became fainter and fainter. After repeating this dozens of times, the figure of the first-generation Dragon Knight finally disappeared completely without a trace. At the same time, the spiritual world of the gray-mouthed iron dragon began to collapse. In the blink of an eye, the blacksmith shop, which used nature as an oven, was completely destroyed. Then a new mountain rose from the ground, and the adult gray-mouthed iron dragon was entrenched on the top of the mountain, nodding to List. The next moment, List was in a trance. He was already riding on the gray-mouthed iron dragon. His broad wings stretched out, and his powerful hind legs stepped on the ground, leaping high from the mountain peak. He soared above the sky of the spiritual world, flying higher and higher, as if he was stepping on the sky under his feet. Suddenly, List opened his eyes. It was still the dark night in front of him, and the gray-mouthed iron dragon was still sleeping soundly under his butt. But he already understood that there was a spiritual connection between him and the gray-mouthed iron dragon. The powerful effect of the mysterious dragon soul fruit was vividly reflected in the spiritual battle. Even the unyielding metal dragon had to succumb to the power of the soul. So what is the power of the emerald dragon? What is the power of the soul? Is it a dream or a soul? List noticed that a problem was troubling him. Legend has it that the emerald dragon represents the dream, but is the power of the dream the same as the power of the soul? Or if the emerald dragon wants to enter a dream, how does it enter the dream? Turn into a wisp of smoke or build a new world? It was hard to figure it out. The emerald dragon's hind leg that was currently stored in the cellar of Firewood Castle had not been carefully studied, so he had no understanding of the emerald dragon's power. "Brother, did you succeed?" Ichi came over and asked. "Well, remove the water spout. The gray-mouthed iron dragon has become my dragon." List smiled reservedly and summoned back Leo, who was a little unhappy with the gray-mouthed iron dragon. List silently negotiated the conditions in his heart. Leo was still young and easy to fool. When Leo grew up, it would be troublesome if he wanted to ride a dragon as he pleased. Ichi was extremely happy. She circled around the sleeping gray-mouthed iron dragon, sizing it up. During the day they were still fighting to the death, but at night they became a family. This feeling was a little weird. She then pointed to the nearby reef. "Big brother, that person has woken up." Piero Grey Iron had already woken up. He was staring at the sleeping gray iron dragon with a complicated expression, as well as List, who was holding his head high and chest out. There was resentment, hatred, sorrow, heartbreak, and so on. The moment before List rode onto the Dragonfang platform, he had already woken up. Although the light was dim in the night, he could still vaguely see what was happening not far away. When List stood up from the Dragon Tooth platform with a smile on his face, Piero felt a sharp pain in his heart. The Grey Iron Duchy's 300-year-old heritage, the Grey Iron Dragon, was lost. Thump thump. Liszt flew up and landed in front of Piero. A crystal lamp illuminated the surroundings as well as Piero's pale face. "Your Highness Liszt, what did you do to my Grey King?" Piero put away his thousands of thoughts and pretended to be friendly, asking with a last shred of hope. But Liszt mercilessly shattered his hope. "Grey King, are you talking about the Grey Iron Dragon?" "I'm very sorry, Duke Piero. From now on, the Grey Iron Dragon belongs to me," Liszt flamed. "It has nothing to do with the Grey Iron Duchy and the Grey Iron family anymore. I hope you understand this." No. Piero gritted his teeth. "You can't snatch the Grey King away. The Eagle Kingdom won't sit idly by. You're openly challenging the kingdom's system. Duke Piero, don't say such nonsense. You have to understand your current status. I'm the winner of the dragon-slaying battle. Lure has already been killed and you're very lucky to survive and become a captive. So next, you need to figure out what ransom you should use to redeem yourself." "Captive?" Piero stared blankly, only now realizing his status as a captive. But he still didn't give up. "Okay, I'll pay the ransom, but you have to return the Grey Iron Dragon. Your Highness Liszt, you're a newly promoted Dragon Knight, so you might not know the rules of inheritance. Snatching dragons is a taboo among the kingdoms." Liszt smiled, feeling that Piero still hadn't woken up. "Will it be more serious than the dragon-slaying battle? Or in other words, the three kingdoms will gather the Dragon Knight together and launch a third dragon-slaying battle against me?" Piero's eyes flickered, unwilling to give up. "You did win the dragon-slaying battle, but your strong performance will break the balance of the kingdoms, especially your invisible dragon. Once it matures, I'm afraid all the Dragon Knight of the kingdoms will be uneasy. They won't let you continue to grow. Yes, the invisible dragon's deterrence is even stronger than the fire dragon's." Liszt echoed, but then his expression turned serious. "It's precisely because of this that I want to collect more dragons and strengthen my forces, so that no one will dare to have any ideas about me. In the era of the knight ruling the world, Duke Piero, you should know very well that only weakness is the original sin. Your idea is crazy. Wrong, it's very wise." Liszt boasted, no longer arguing with Piero about this issue. He always believed in the saying, "As long as I have a gun in my hand, I won't panic." The more dragons he had, the safer he would be, not the safer he would be if he lost his dragon. Duke Piero, cut the crap. You need to seriously consider how much ransom to pay. Under the starlight, the Grey Iron Dragon was still sleeping. The power of the enchanting dragon fruit was very powerful, making this huge creature extremely weak and at the mercy of others. Fortunately, the enchanting dragon fruit was called the emerald fruit in ancient times, a product of the emerald dragon. If it could naturally grow an enchanting dragon fruit and then bear the enchanting dragon fruit, then all the Dragon Knight wouldn't be at ease. Who knew when their dragon would be snatched? "Brother, is it called the Grey King?" "The Grey King is the name given by the Grey Iron Duchy. It should have a new name when it comes to the Fire Kingdom." Liszt pondered for a while. "Let's call it Orn." Orn was a demigod of Freljord in charge of forging and craftsmanship. He carved out a magnificent workshop in a karst cave under a volcano called Furnace Village, and worked in it alone. He fiddled with the boiling lava crucible, refined the ore, and created incomparably fine objects. This was the blacksmith in League of Legends, which was quite suitable for the strange world atmosphere of the Grey Iron Dragon in the spiritual world. Orn. Achi muttered and felt that it was quite good. Chapter 881. Mission completed. Reward, Cannibal Trees. The smoke mission was undoubtedly completed perfectly, and the reward was immediately released. Liszt did not know what a cannibal tree was for the time being and did not pay much attention to it. At this time, his mood was still immersed in the joy of the fourth dragon. The smoke mission instantly turned into a new serpentine. Mission: perfectly complete the second dragon-slaying war. Your name will shake the entire legendary continent. The sea will tremble when it hears your name. Now that the battle is over, the matter is not over. Why not punish the traitor in Sapphire by yourself? Reward: Elven Figure. Punishing the traitor. This mission is simple. Elven Figure. What is the reward? Liszt thought about it, but he had no clue, so he decisively gave up. In many cases, the reward of the smoke mission was a supplement to the content of the mission. One could examine the mission itself through the clues of the reward. But most of the time, the reward had little to do with the mission. For example, there was no connection between this smoke mission and the reward, so there was no need to think about it. When the mission was completed, he would naturally know what the elven figure was. I'm going to sleep. I'll return directly to Black Horse Island tomorrow and then bring a message to Sapphire Grand Duke. Although he did not participate in the dragon-slaying war, I don't believe that he will be unaware of the dragon-slaying war that took place inside Sapphire. It's not so easy to reap the benefits. And List's prediction was not wrong. In the Blue Sky Mountain Raising Palace, the Sapphire Grand Duke was listening to the rat leader's report about the situation on Hot Spring Island. The Eagle Kingdom's Dragon Knights have withdrawn, and the Count of Hot Spring Island has taken action to wipe out the traces on the island. However, our rats have discovered another wave of rats active on Hot Spring Island. Is it the rats under the Flame Marquee? It's very likely. They have been inquiring about the transportation of materials on Hot Spring Island from the beginning. Obviously, they know the news that the Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom is stationed on Hot Spring Island. So this dragon-slaying war ended with the death of the Purple Copper Grand Duke? Sapphire Grand Duke sat in the main seat, his eyes deep. No one knew what he was thinking about. Prince Anthony sat next to him and wanted to say something, but he did not dare to interrupt the conversation between the Grand Duke and the rat leader. The rat chieftain replied, "We haven't managed to gather any deeper information yet. Everything in the Flame territory is operating normally. However, on the night of the dragon-slaying battle, the Flame Marquis returned to Thorn Castle to rest for the night. If this subordinate's deduction is correct, the Flame Marquis won the dragon-slaying battle." Fire Dragon, Light Emerald Dragon? How did he defeat the 3 Dragon Knights, Alex, Alonso and Lure, as well as the 5 dragons? The Grand Duke muttered to himself, unable to understand. Anthony could not help but interrupt. "Father, do you believe this result? No matter how strong the Flame Marquis is, do you think he can contend against a 5-headed dragon?" "I can't see through it and I can't figure it out either. However, I do know one thing. Since the Flame Territory's rats were active on the Hot Spring Island in advance, it means that List already knew about their situation. He could calmly prepare himself whether he should hide or stand out. Lure's results also prove this point. But, no buts." The Grand Duke interrupted what Anthony was about to say. He coughed and a deep exhaustion appeared on his aged face. The current situation is that Alex and the other Dragon Knight were forced to leave. They lost the dragon-slaying battle or else the news would have spread. He paused to let his breathing become smoother. "And we have to face the Flame Marquis List, who won the dragon-slaying battle. He is the future king of the Flame Kingdom." King of the Flame Kingdom? He really dares to give himself a title. Anthony said indignantly. To be able to win 2 dragon-slaying battles, he has the qualifications to become the new overlord of the sea and the new king of the Flame Kingdom. The sea is no longer peaceful, and it is time for the Sapphire family to make a choice. Anthony, this country will ultimately be handed over to your hands. What do you think we should choose? This? Anthony originally had a lot of things to say, but the words stuck in his throat. Why don't we destroy the Hot Spring Island first, stabilize the Flame Marquis, and then send someone to contact the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family? Once the Flame Kingdom is established, the Iron and Steel Ridge should not be able to sit still. Don't interfere with the Hot Spring Island. List has already noticed the Hot Spring Island. Leave it to him to deal with it personally and also test his thoughts. We are in an awkward position, Anthony. External forces will never last. All we can rely on is the Sapphire Dragon. Moreover, Sapphire Grand Duke felt a little bitter in his heart. He had signed an offensive and defensive alliance with List, but he watched the fire from the other side. This young Dragon Knight was not someone who could be easily dismissed. After returning to Black Horse Island, List arranged for Duke Piero. The other party was a Sky Knight at the perfect level, and his strength was not weak. Therefore, although he could enjoy good treatment, the necessary shackles still had to be put on him. As for the Grey Iron Dragon Orn, he was not brought to Black Horse Island. Instead, he was temporarily placed on the Heart Island to recuperate. Orn had already woken up. He was still a little conflicted about the fact that he was being ridden and remained silent. However, he accepted the potion that List gave him and acquiesced to his relationship with List. No matter how the battle of the soul was won, as long as the victory was won, the proud character of the dragon would not deny the Dragon Knight. Subsequently, without stopping, List went to Coral Island Tulip Castle and saw the Marquis of Oxtail. "Father, there is something I need to give you to deal with." "What is it?" "The day before yesterday, there was a dragon-slaying battle on the Northern Sea." List simply explained the battle without deliberately exaggerating the situation, and without using a ups and downs tone. But when the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper died, the Grey Iron Duke was captured, and the gray iron dragon Orn became List's mount. Such news was casually said, and the Marquis of Oxtail was still shocked and speechless for a long time. Until List quietly drank a cup of tea. He tried to digest the news and restore his father's dignity. You said that 5 dragons besieged you, but you killed a dragon knight and captured one of the iron dragons. In the blink of an eye, 2 vassal states of the Eagle Kingdom faced the risk of collapse, while you were unscathed. As you can see, I am now very healthy. This is too sudden, List. If I hadn't seen you standing here, I would have doubted whether you were my son or not. Although I consider myself talented, I never thought that my son could have such a glorious achievement. You are far more legendary than what is described in the Night novels. In the Night novels, the protagonist would at most ride a dragon and have a carefree ending. List, on the other hand, was constantly riding dragons at the rate of 2 dragons a year. Perhaps the sea needs a king to stand up, and I happen to be the choice. He spoke with rare humility. Father, the stance of the Sapphire family in this dragon-slaying battle leaves me bitterly disappointed. As allies who watch and help each other, they sit by and watch the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom, which seriously infringes on my interests. What do you want to do? To be honest, I haven't thought about it, but if I can't vent this anger, I will feel very uncomfortable. You know that I already have 4 dragons and I don't mind adding another one. You have to give me a bottom line so that I can talk to the Grand Duke about this matter. The resources needed to support 4 dragons are massive, and the Grand Duchy of Sapphire must pay a part of it. But the most important thing is the attitude. The Fire Kingdom is about to be established, and I still lack a vassal state. You want Sapphire to be your vassal state? Lee William was surprised. Chapter 882. Captain Marcus, gather all the orders of chivalry on the island and follow me to Hot Spring Island. List pointed with his sword, and Black Horse Island suddenly boiled. As you wish, Your Highness. Marcus was inexplicably excited. He was now a baron. 4 years ago, he was just a civilian without a title, following a lord with no future and going to the declining and dilapidated Flower Town. He never thought that one day he would walk on familiar ground as a baron. Looking at List's shadow in the sun, his heart was filled with infinite loyalty and reverence, because he understood that all this was given by the young lord in front of him. Compared with 4 years ago, the young lord had already shed his childishness and become an indomitable dragon knight. Now the young lord had won the second battle of the dragon and was now going to clean up the traitors and spread the inviolable glory of the dragon knight. Marcus quickly conveyed List's decree, summoned the various knight squads, and issued a war mobilization. He was not strong, just an elite Earth Knight, but he had a high position of power. Everyone knew that he was List's spokesperson and in charge of the most elite flower orders of chivalry. It was not only the knight of the flower orders of chivalry who was gathering, but all the Earth Knight who stayed on Black Horse Island were gathering in the direction of the dock. In fact, List alone could eradicate the Count of Hot Spring Island, but he still did all the knight in the territory. Whether old or weak, as long as it was an Earth Knight, they were mobilized, looking for weapons and equipment and boarding fast sailboats. The dock could already produce fast 2-masted sailboats, but the 3-masted fast sailboats had not yet been fully mastered. Your Highness, will the patrols also be dispatched? Paris came to ask, riding a black blood horse. As a light magic swordsman at the same level as the Sky Knight and the Great Magician, her strength has grown rapidly in recent years, and she can already fight against the Sword Saint without falling behind. She was an early confidant of List. Currently, she only had the title of Baron, which made List somewhat dissatisfied. Although this plump and beautiful female follower was not very smart, she was very much appreciated and trusted by him. He hoped that he could promote her to a high position as soon as possible to keep the captive faction in check. The captive faction was a thought in List's mind. It referred to the Sky Knight's followers who were captured from the Eagle Kingdom. There were many of them and they were very strong. It was easy for them to form cliques. Sift through the patrol group. All the Earth Knights will go to battle. Paris, not only your patrol group, but Charles's security group also needs to send the Earth Knight. Going to the Hot Spring Island is the best reward I can give to the old people who have followed me. Your Highness, you are a lord who cherishes old friendships. You deserve the loyalty of every knight, Paris said respectfully. There was still a hint of uncontrollable love in her eyes. No woman would not be tempted by the Dragon Knight, not to mention that the Dragon Knight was so handsome and tall. If the Grand Duchy of Sapphire published something like, the sexiest male knight in the eyes of the women in the country, List would definitely be elected with full votes. The glory belongs to me. I am with you. List reached out and patted Paris on the shoulder. Seeing this light magic great swordsman, he thought of the light dragon that lived in the Maple Mountain of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf. It was a huge dragon with a length of 80 meters. It was powerful and unpredictable. No dragon knight dared to strangle this dragon and achieve the title of Dragon Slayer Hero. List was in the mood to join in the fun. But the time was not right yet. It was not the right time to go out and mess around. But then again, he was currently a dragon knight who achieved a double kill. The light green gem dragon knight, Carl Low Violet, and the purple copper dragon knight, Lloyd Purple Copper, all died in his hands. This record was considered glorious among the dragon knight. After all, most dragon knights died of old age. It was rare to die in battle. Your Highness, Charles reports to you. The security group has gathered all the Earth Knights. They are ready to fight at any time. Charles Trapp rushed over quickly. His enthusiasm for battle achievements was far greater than Paris's. Paris was a woman and a bit lazy. Moreover, her strength was already comparable to a sword saint. Sooner or later she would become a high-ranking noble. Charles, the elite Earth Knight, was different. He had to seize every opportunity to achieve battle achievements. Commander Paris, Commander Charles, since the orders of chivalry have been gathered, you will board the ship immediately and listen to Commander Marcus's command. Yes, Your Highness. For a time, 5 orders of chivalry were gathered on Black Horse Island. The orders of chivalry led by Marcus, the orders of chivalry formed by Sky Knight Derek Iron and Joyce Dandelion respectively, and the alternative orders of chivalry formed by Paris and Charles. Only one Sky Knight, Spec, was left in the territory to be responsible for security. The 5 orders of chivalry boarded the ship and set off in the direction of Hot Spring Island. On the other side, Tulip Castle also gathered a large number of knights and rushed to Cube Island to clear the Cube Island Viscount. However, Marquis Oxtail did not personally participate. He had set off for Blue Dragon Island, ready to negotiate with Sapphire Grand Duke about matters related to the Second Dragon-Slaying War. Behind him stood his son riding a 4-headed dragon. Ignoring the shocks, he had never felt so good. Hot Spring Island. The Count was rubbing a batch of treasures in the cellar. These were all sent by the Eagle Kingdom. He risked his life to become a trader, so naturally he needed to get a high reward. It's really beautiful. This Crystal Helen statue is definitely made by the top crystal craftsman in the Eagle Kingdom. It's so beautiful that it's like it's alive. Ah, great Crystal Helen, you once guided the Moon Empire forward. Now, are you willing to guide this lost knight to your heart? He closed his eyes as if intoxicated in a psychedelic love. There was an extremely beautiful woman hugging and kissing him. Clatter. Woo 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 woo. An emergency horn suddenly sounded over the castle, interrupting the Count of Hot Spring Island from his fantasy. Just as he was about to burst into anger, he suddenly remembered that this horn was a warning sound that would only be sounded when the territory was being invaded. What's going on? He hurriedly wrapped the half-man-tall Crystal Helen statue in soft cloth, then rushed out of the cellar angrily and shouted at the knight who was hurriedly lining up outside. My lord, it's the Flame Territory's orders of chivalry. A knight captain rushed over on horseback and hurriedly replied, the Flame Territory's orders of chivalry have invaded our Hot Spring Island. They have already conquered the seaside city of Sand City and are now rushing towards the Hot Spring Castle. My lord, please get ready for battle. Flame Territory? The Count's heart skipped a beat, then contracted violently. It was April, but he felt like he had fallen into a 9-story ice cellar. He felt a bone-chilling coldness. Flame Territory. List Flame. Dragon-slaying battle. As it happened. Before he could figure out the situation. In the distance, the knight who was lining up to face the enemy suddenly exclaimed, Dragon! It's a dragon. Fire Dragon, the Fire Dragon of the Marquis of the Flame Territory. Why is the Flame Territory attacking our Hot Spring Island? Isn't he afraid of the Grand Duke's punishment? It's over, it's over. The Dragon Knight is attacking personally. In the midst of the exclamations, the figure of a fire dragon appeared in the sky. Its 30-meter-wide wingspan gently flapped, wrapped in boundless flames, and spread towards the Hot Spring Castle. There was no breathing, no impact, just the flames set off by its wings, aimed at the Hot Spring Castle and burned. The horses neighed, and all the knight in the line fled with their heads in their hands. The Hot Spring Castle's orders of chivalry did not resist and completely dissipated. The fire dragon swept over the castle. List, who was riding on the dragon's back, glanced at the tall castle, his eyes very indifferent. Behind him, the 5 orders of chivalry of Black Horse Island assembled to charge. The torrent of chi instantly submerged the Hot Spring Castle. In one corner of the battlefield, Paris, Derek Iron Armor, and Joyce Dandelion flew up and rushed towards the Count of Hot Spring Island, who was preparing to escape, and blasted him back. Everything. Chapter 883. The traitor must die. But before the trial, the Earl of Hot Spring was not killed, but was arrested. Then he began to summon his territory to orders of chivalry. Punishing the traitor was just a gimmick. What List really needed were the resources of Hot Spring Island, material resources and human resources. The betrayal of the Earl of Hot Spring Island gave him an excuse to rob resources openly. At this moment, standing in the cellar, looking at the dazzling treasures, List asked the Earl of Hot Spring, whose hands and feet were tied, with great interest. The Eagle Kingdom is really willing to spend so much. So many treasures are given to you. I often go to the Tulip family's cellar, but it's not even 1/10 of the treasures you have here. Tell me, when did they instigate you to become a spy in Sapphire? Your Highness, I am willing to dedicate all my wealth to you, and my family and I are also willing to follow you for life. The Earl of Hot Spring said hurriedly. And then, continue to be a spy. How can that be, Your Highness? I am really willing to change. I will turn over a new leaf and follow you forever. This kind of nonsense was really meaningless, but the Earl of Hot Spring had to say it, even if there was only a slight chance of being forgiven. However, List did not care about any of his statements. It was too degrading to bargain with a dead man, not to mention that he was a real dragon knight. When did you become a spy in the Kingdom of Eagle? 10 years ago, my son was captured by the Kingdom of Eagle when he participated in the Expansion War. Since then, I have been His Highness Alonso's spy. But Your Highness, I did not do anything to betray the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Your father, Marquis Oxtail, and I are old friends. Receiving the Dragon Knight of the Kingdom of Eagle and launching a dragon-slaying war against me, is this also called no betrayal? This? I didn't know why they came here. I just thought they were looking for something. The Earl of Hot Spring's forehead was sweating. He knew that the lie was full of loopholes, but he still had to brace himself and continue. What is this? List suddenly noticed the crystal statue that was half a man's height. The crystal statue seemed to be a pink crystal, which was probably a byproduct of pink rubies. However, this statue was very complete. Its entire body was transparent and without any flaws. It was obvious that it was a very high-quality associated ore. The carved figure was that of a magician, wearing a tight-fitting magic robe. Although the crystal was pink and transparent, the facial features and figure of the statue could be said to be perfect. Even though List was used to a delicate siren like a chi, he couldn't help but be amazed by the sorcerer in the statue. She was sexy, beautiful, and dignified. In particular, the transparency of the crystal combined with the angle of the sculpture made it seem as if the person in the sculpture was a living person, looking at him with a faint smile. Opening magic eyes, he could see that every line on the statue's clothes was a magic line, and there were traces of magic arrays. This was a magic equipment. It's Crystal Helen. The Count of Hot Spring sounded lost and confused, but he soon came back to himself. Your Highness, this is the most precious treasure in my collection. It was made by a top crystal master, who worked with a sorcerer to build it into a treasure that combines beauty and magic. Crystal Helen? List seemed to have heard this name before. The Count of Hot Spring was still enthusiastically introducing. It is not only beautiful but also has a special effect. When it is placed in the castle, it will comb the wandering magic of the castle, making people feel relaxed and happy. Ordinary people bathed in her aura will be free from diseases and disasters, and knight and sorcerers can enjoy the convenience of cultivation. He paused. The Count of Hot Spring seemed to be giving up his beloved woman. I am willing to offer it to Your Highness. Only Your Highness is qualified to enjoy such a treasure. Who is Crystal Helen? List suddenly asked. Well, she is a legendary empress of the Moon Empire, the supreme leader of the sorcerers. Her beauty makes the moon lose its color, and even dragons are awed by her beauty and are willing to be driven by her. I remember now. List nodded. He had read a magic book that mentioned the Empress of the Moon Empire. Although the Moon Empire was a world ruled by sorcerers, it was also an imperial system and a slave system. One of the empresses was called Helen Truth, and she loved crystals very much. Because of her beauty, the magicians who fell in love with her had built a crystal palace for her. Pillars, roofs, arches, steps, including thrones, tables, chairs, clothes, carriages, cutlery, and even toilets, were all made of crystal. It was ridiculous. However, the legend of the Moon Empire was already very vague. No one knew if the Crystal Palace really existed. Even the existence of Crystal Helen was doubtful. The statue in front of him was a very good decoration. Of course, Liszt would accept it and move it back to his castle to add to the artistic atmosphere of the castle. Pack it all up and take it away. He waved his hand and gave the order. As for the Count of Hot Spring, after he introduced the origin and function of the collection, he could be taken to the execution ground and prepared to be hanged. Usually, a noble knight could buy his freedom with a ransom, but it was not suitable for traitors. Back then, the Sapphire Grand Duke had set off a round of bloody purges on the Iron Hoof Island. Liszt killed a count and lord with the same ease. In front of the square of the Hot Spring Castle, many of the incorporated knight came to watch. A Black Horse Island official read the count's crimes in front of the gallows. The Count of Hot Spring Island is despicable, killed a knight, abused civilians, colluded with the Kingdom of Eagle, assassinated a Grand Duchy Marquis, and conspired against the Flame Territory. His crimes are heinous and unforgivable. He shall be hanged immediately. After the crimes were read, the Count of Hot Spring Island was hanged alive in front of all the knights' hearts. Some of his servants and confidants were also hanged on the gallows for various crimes. It was not known if there was hell or some other place where the dead went, where they could continue to follow the Count of Hot Spring Island. Liszt stood on the balcony of the Hot Spring Castle. He wanted to see the hanging clearly. Marcus was at his side, reporting the materials harvested from the Hot Spring Castle. The Count of Hot Spring Island was an old count, and he also colluded with the Kingdom of Eagle. His wealth was astonishing. There were a lot of gems, jade, gold coins and other resources. There were also a lot of sprites, 1 great sprite, 16 lesser sprites and 136 sprite worms. They were all contracted to his son. However, they would soon be handed over to Liszt one by one. The knight and serfs on the island also began to count them one after another. When the time comes, those who should immigrate to Flame Island will directly immigrate there. The remaining assets that cannot be taken away can be bought back by the Sapphire family. The harvest is really rich. This kind of thing makes money quickly. Liszt thought happily. Compared to the gray-mouthed iron dragon harvested in the dragon-slaying war, these resources were nothing. But after all, there was only one iron dragon, and the resources of the Hot Spring Island were dazzling and varied, giving people more stimulation. Chapter 884. 1 corn sprite, a cereal sprite, was of high value. There were 5 corn sprites, 2 barley sprites and 1 wheat sprite. They were all grains and were very valuable. 1 jasmine sprite, 1 half lotus sprite, and 1 magic ingredient sprite were of high value. 1 tomato sprite, 1 apple sprite were of good value, 1 black tea sprite, as a common source of tea fruits used by aristocrats, was of good value. 1 mangosteen sprite, 1 brocade sprite and 1 stone sprite were of ordinary value, were of ornamental value. There were also 136 sprite worms, 10 of which were of high value, of which 10 were of the magic ingredient sprite. In short, the resources plundered from the Hot Spring Island were huge, which could be said to be enough for Liszt to eat until he was fat. These were all resources that could be put to use at this time. Let's call this sprite Tick, Doombringer Fettick. In League of Legends, Fettick was a scarecrow. When Liszt saw that the farmland around the Hot Spring Castle was full of corn and many scarecrows, he gave the corn great sprite a new name. The only regret was that the corn great sprite Tick was already 150 years old. Based on the lifespan of a great sprite of 200 years, it could live for another 50 years. Moreover, its character was a bit stiff. The Count of the Hot Spring Island treated the sprites as tools, so the sprites were very dull. They were not lively enough. But now, after becoming Liszt's sprites, they would enjoy a better life, a happy and comfortable living environment. The Count of the Hot Spring Island had 4 Viscount followers. Originally, Liszt planned to take advantage of the situation to wipe them out, but the 4 Viscounts reacted too quickly. Without waiting for the Flame Lord's orders of chivalry to attack, they all knelt in front of Liszt. Using the excuse of ignorance, they begged Liszt's forgiveness and took advantage of the situation to pledge allegiance to the new lord. One after another, they declared that they were willing to migrate Flame Island and develop a new island for the Flame family. Seeing their former lord being hanged to death, they couldn't bring themselves to take revenge at all. After all, the enemy they were facing was the Dragon Knight. As for the Earl of Hot Spring Island and the Kingdom of Eagle, it was hard for them to not know, and they had no intention of being loyal to the Earl of Hot Spring Island. The knight prided himself on his loyalty, but under the premise that he could buy himself back with a ransom, how much loyalty could he have? Interests were the only value that the nobles pursued tirelessly. Anyway, at the top of the city wall there was a huge royal flag. But apart from the fall of the former owner of the hot spring island, there were not many changes. After the knights were incorporated, they were still stationed on the hot spring island, and the serfs still had to farm. Of course, immigration would still be implemented, but it would have to wait until the magic transmission array was opened. Currently, they did not have the ability to transport manpower and resources from Hot Spring Island to Flame Island. Furthermore, the spring plowing had already passed, and they could not delay the growth of the crops. After the hot spring castle was cleaned, it became List's palace. The elves were still kept here, but there were special servants and night guards here. List stayed here for 2 days and then he got up and left. He had to deliver new food to Fire City. Although a batch of potatoes had just been harvested, the population had soared to 300,000 due to the absorption of the moon killers throughout the winter. Orders of chivalry were busy collecting food in the forest, but they still could not sustain the growing food consumption. While List was happily plundering the spoils of war, Prince Alex, who lost the Battle of the Dragon Slaying, took Alonso and the dragons and directly returned to the capital of the Kingdom of Eagle. It was not clear what happened to the Grey Iron Dragon and Duke Piero. The news of the return of the Dragon Knight was not leaked, and only some people in the palace knew. The king summoned Prince Alex and Marquis Alonso in the palace. When the body of the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper was carried into the hall, the king raised his eyebrows directly, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Subsequently, he heard the whole story of the dragon-slaying battle from Alex. So, Grand Duke Lure died in battle, and the dragon-slaying battle that cost a lot of national power failed again? The King of Eagle had a thick beard that covered his expression, and his eyes did not have much color, as if he was asking about an insignificant matter. But Alex and Alonso, who were familiar with the king, knew that the other side was angry to the extreme. Alonso directly knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty, Alonso is incompetent and delayed the kingdom's war. I am willing to accept your Majesty's punishment." As a prince, Alex did not need to kneel, he just cupped his fists and said, "Your Majesty, I am not shirking my responsibility, but the reason for the failure of this dragon-slaying battle is more because of the appearance of the invisible dragon. No one could have thought that List had an invisible dragon as a mount." Invisible dragon. The King of Eagles slammed the scepter in his hand on the floor. "Which one of you can tell me why the holy dragon was born in the aquamarine sea, and why it fell into the hands of List?" At this time, the excuse of the knight's glory and the like obviously could not fool him. Alonso said in a deep voice, "If I am not wrong, List has already mastered the ruins of the ancient Moon Empire era. The legend of the Holy Dragon was active in the Moon Empire era, and it has not appeared for many years. The birth of high mages is definitely related to the ruins of the Moon Empire. The shrinking of the weave was not unfamiliar news to the Dragon Knight. And the promotion of a new high mage did not mean that the weave was restored, so Alonso believed that Achi's promotion was achieved by relying on the ruins of the Moon Empire era. This guess could not be wrong. It was indeed through the tears of the mermaid that Achi came into contact with the weave and laid the foundation for her promotion. And the Temple of Fish Clown was more or less related to the Moon Empire. It was also not wrong to say that it was the ruins of the Moon Empire era. It was just that they all ignored List's personal reasons. All his strength came from his personal struggle. After all, the smoke mission was part of his body, and the power of fate had long been integrated with him. But strictly speaking, the death of the smoke dragon and the survival of the power of fate seemed to be related to the ancient Moon Empire. Alonso's guess was not wrong in the general direction. The Moon Empire. An ancient empire that has been decaying for who knows how many years. Alonso, do you think this reason can convince me? The Eagle King's tone turned cold. For this dragon-slaying war, the kingdom has spent a lot of resources and used many connections. Now tell me how much the kingdom has suffered from the failure of the dragon-slaying war. Your Majesty, please punish me. Will punishing you help things? At this moment, the Eagle King still did not know that there was a problem with the Grey Iron Dragon. The Purple Copper Grand Duchy has always been the western barrier of the kingdom. Grand Duke Lure was my strong supporter, but he is dead. How can I explain this to my aunt and cousin? The Eagle King's cousin was Lure's wife, the Grand Duchess. Prince Alex sighed. This matter was not timely enough. Your Majesty, please allow me to personally escort the body of Grand Duke Lure back to the Purple Copper Grand Duchy. No matter what the Purple Copper family requests, I will do my best to satisfy them. The Eagle King looked at Alex and did not speak. After a long time he sighed faintly. Alonso, get up. Tomorrow return to the border and continue to guard. As for Grand Duke Lure's sacrifice, I will personally contact my aunt. Now, I need you to immediately come up with a response. I want to know how to stop List's growth. He paused. Chapter 885. The dragon-slaying battle on Dodo Island did not happen in public, so the nobles of Sapphire Isles did not know about this great war. However, the Knights of the Fire Territory did not hide the fact that they had publicly destroyed the Hot Spring Island. After the merchants on the island and the rats in the dark spread the news, it spread to the ears of all the nobles in the Sapphire Archipelago within a week. What's going on? Why did the Marquis of the Flame destroy Hot Spring Island? Even the Dragon Knight can't be so reckless. Is the Grand Duke not doing anything? The Count of Hot Spring Island is an upright and sincere man. The Marquis of the Flame is indeed powerful, but he can't bully the weak like this. This is trampling on the dignity of a knight. Many nobles and lords did not dare to comment on this matter in public, but after socializing, they would inevitably use the excuse of being drunk to criticize the Flame Territory for bullying the weak. There were even nobles and lords who spoke directly to the Sapphire Grand Duke, hoping that the Grand Duke would step in and stop this matter. However, just as the news of the Flame Territory destroying Hot Spring Island spread, merchants and rats quickly brought new explosive news. The Oxtail Marquis orders of chivalry to destroy Cube Island within a day. The attack was carried out openly, without any concealment, and without the permission of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island. The Viscount of Cube Island was the follower of the Marquis of Deep Throat Island, Wallace Pineapple Green. Destroying him naturally required Wallace's permission, or else it would be considered a provocation. On the other side, the Dragon Knight List publicly destroyed the follower of another Dragon Knight. On the other side, the Marquis of Oxtail publicly destroyed the follower of another Marquis. This caused the public opinion of Sapphire Isles to boil. What are the Marquis of Oxtail and the Marquis of the Flame trying to do? I've dealt with Lee William before. He's a loyal and upright knight. Why would he do such a thing? If Marquis Wallace offended the Marquis of Oxtail and attacked the Viscount of Cube Island as a punishment, it would make sense. But the Marquis of the Flame destroying the Count of Hot Spring Island, what does this mean? Could it be that the Tulip family wants to turn against the Grand Duke? The Grand Duke can't sit idly by, or else the Tulip family will rely on the Dragon Knight and the High Mage to overthrow Sapphire's rule. We must advise the Grand Duke. However, before these discussions had even begun, Mahuing's orders of chivalry's night had already passed on the Sapphire Grand Duke's edict to all the major island lords. A jaw-dropping piece of news exploded. The Master of the Azure Wave Sea, the Lord of the Sapphire Islands, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke, hereby announces to all his followers and knight that the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island have colluded with the Eagle Kingdom and provided assistance to the invasion of the Eagle Kingdom's 5 dragons and 3 knight. They have assassinated the Marquis of the Flame and started the dragon-slaying war. The Marquis of the Flame put up a strong resistance. He ended up killing the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper and repelled the Eagle Kingdom's evil plan. He also quickly destroyed the 2 traitors, the Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Cube Island. The Marquis of the Flame and the Marquis of Oxtail pursue loyalty, justice, courage, and fearlessness. This is an excellent display of the noble qualities of a knight. At the same time, the detailed news released by the merchants of the Flame Territory, the Oxtail Territory, and the Rat quickly spread. Every dragon-slaying war was the best headline news of the year. There was no need to expend any effort to publicize it. It would naturally cause an explosion. The White Iron Dragon Knight Alex White Iron, the Bronze Dragon Knight Alonso Cyclamen, the Purple Copper Dragon Knight Lure Purple Copper, the Grey Iron Dragon, the Silver Dragon, and the 5 dragons and 3 knight joined forces to besiege the Marquis of the Flame. However, the Great Fire Dragon Knight, the Formless Dragon Knight, and the Light Green Gemstone Dragon Knight List of the Flame killed Lure and defeated the 5 dragons. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The dragon-slaying war on Dodo Island involved 8 dragons. His Highness List occupied 3 dragons and defeated the 5 dragons and the knight. His strength is boundless. The Formless Dragon is a holy dragon, the legendary Holy Dragon. He's too powerful. The knight is blessed by glory. His Highness the Marquis of the Flame is not a son of glory. He is glory itself. How terrifying. The Count of Hot Spring Island and the Viscount of Square Island colluded with the Eagle Kingdom. The traitors must die. The Marquis of the Flame destroyed them in a righteous war. Marquis Wallace personally thanked Marquis Oxtail, thanking him for destroying the Viscount of Square Island, the traitor. Who can tell me if this is true? Why is His Highness List recognized by the three dragons? Is he the embodiment of the knight's glory? In an instant, the nobles and feudal lords who originally had opinions about List destroying the Count of Hot Spring Island changed their opinions one after another. They wanted to praise List 24 hours a day. They were afraid that their previous complaints would reach List's ears. If List was just a dragon knight, he would have a magic shooter as his helper. They could still rely on the Sapphire Grand Duke to back up some of their verbal accusations. These accusations were to protect the interests of the aristocratic class, and they also hoped that the Grand Duke would treat them favorably. But the news that had arrived was too terrifying. List had actually ridden on 3 dragons alone, killed a dragon knight, and defeated 3 dragon knight and 5 dragons of the Eagle Kingdom by himself. Coupled with the gorgeous fighting style of the magic shooter, such a tyrannical, cool and heaven-defying configuration. It could be said that even if the Sapphire family was destroyed, no one would dare say a word. Although the world ruled by the knight system had a relatively strict order and rules, when one's strength reached a certain level, so what if one broke the rules? The Master of the Sea has changed. Marquis Wallace Pineapple stood at the bow of the ship, his heart feeling weak and haggard. As early as when the Tulip family had swept through Cube Island, he had personally led orders of chivalry to deal with them and questioned the leader, Levis. What is the meaning of the Tulip family? What is your father's meaning? Killing my followers for no reason. Levis, who rarely participated in wars, mainly came to get military achievements. But he had become a Sky Knight after all, and he had cultivated a calm demeanor. He calmly replied, Marquis Wallace, my orders are from His Highness List, the Dragon Knight. There might be some news that you don't know, but His Highness List has killed another Dragon Knight. He only spoke briefly about the dragon-slaying battle. Then Wallace's expression fluctuated between green and white, turning into a faint sigh. He did not say anything more before turning around and leaving, no longer concerned about the survival of Cube Island. That night, Wallace took a ship to Blue Dragon Island. When he arrived at Blue Dragon Island, he saw Sapphire Grand Duke and Oxtail Marquis drinking tea in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace. Accompanying them were Duchess Sarit Grandflower Huilon, eldest Prince Anthony, Marquis Glendonton Maple Leaf of Maple City, and Marquis Nesta Grandflower Huilon of Quicksand City. It could be said that all the higher-ups of the Sapphire family were drinking tea with Lee William. Such a high standard was simply inconceivable. When he saw this scene, Wallace already understood that the Sapphire family no longer had the final say in the sea. After staying in the Blue Sky Mountain Palace for a night and receiving an edict personally written by the Grand Duke, Wallace left Blue Dragon Island with flagging interest and returned to his territory. He felt that he was getting old, and it was time to retire and enjoy his old age, no longer participating in the struggle for power among the nobles. The former Marquis of Red Crab Island, Merlin Longtaro, had been the companion of Sapphire Grand Duke since he was young. How could Wallace Pineapple not be loyal since he was young? The Master of the Sea has changed. Looking at the title at the beginning of the edict, Wallace once again sighed with emotion in his heart. In the past, the Sapphire Grand Duke's official letters all began with the title, Master of the Sea, Lord of all Islands, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke. But now the edict was Master of the Aquamarine Waves Sea, Lord of the Sapphire Archipelago, the Great Sapphire Grand Duke. From the sea to the Aquamarine Waves Sea, from all islands to the Sapphire Archipelago. The meaning was self-evident. Chapter 886. The land area was too large and it was inconvenient to transmit information. The news that Piero Greysteel had been captured and that the Greysteel dragon had become List's mount had not yet spread. In fact, the result of the dragon-slaying battle had just been brewed among the higher-ups of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire and the Eagle Kingdom. Of course, the rats of the major kingdoms and duchies had already brought the news back home. It would not be long before the northeastern corner of the entire legendary continent would be completely boiling. Some people felt uneasy, some listened to the story, some worshipped madly, and some were inexplicably jealous. These were all normal operations. However, List was destined to add firewood. The reason was simple. He himself was quite low-key, but after completing the mission to punish the traitor, he issued a rather high-profile new mission. Mission: the Grand Duchy of Sapphire has begun to praise your name, and the higher-ups of the Eagle Kingdom are also conspiring to curb your growth. But a real man is not afraid of the dirty business in the dark. It's time to ride the gray steel dragon and visit the blue dragon island, and let the Sapphire family make the right choice. Reward: the first vassal country to surrender. Obviously, the Sapphire Grand Duke was still hesitating. This was also a matter of course. List's previous generations had been followers of the Sapphire family. But one day their identities were reversed, and the Sapphire family was to become followers of List. From the perspective of interests, List, who had a multi-headed dragon and a magic shooter, already had the qualifications to be a king. It was logical for a duchy to surrender to a kingdom, and they were all countries on the sea. But from the emotional aspect it was extremely difficult. Another point was that the Sapphire family still had expectations for the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family. They hoped to be able to strike a balance between the Iron and Steel Ridge kingdom and the future Fire kingdom. They were not willing to casually change sides. The Sapphire Grand Duke's idea is not excessive. Although he belongs to the treacherous side in terms of offensive and defensive alliance, he is, after all, the lord that the Tulip family has followed for generations. Being too harsh and forcing the family's reputation is not good. It was reasonable. The relationship between the Sapphire family and the Tulip family was good. The Tulip family had never betrayed them, and the Sapphire family had never treated them harshly. This friendship had to be taken into account. Otherwise, List's reputation would be terrible after his rise. Reputation was just icing on the cake most of the time. However, as a noble family and a top-notch dragon-rearing family at that, they still had to rely on the knight system to maintain their rule. They still needed to add to their reputation. Then I'll ride on the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Orn and go to Blue Dragon Island to deal with the situation. Let the Sapphire Grand Duke judge the situation himself. He looked at the smoke mission and decided. After the delivery of the food, they traveled through space and arrived at the Heart Island. The gray-mouthed Iron Dragon Aoun, who was recuperating from his injuries, had almost recovered. He did not suffer from the heavy injuries that the light green gemstone dragon had suffered previously. Instead, he only suffered some external injuries. Hence, with the strong recovery ability of a dragon, he recovered very quickly. However, it would take some time to replenish the depleted Supreme Dragon Demon. Normal riding and fighting were no longer a problem. Roar! Aoun did not have a good impression of List. After all, he had forced himself on List to complete the soul battle. However, after erasing the first-generation Dragon Knight soul brand, Aoun still accepted List as his Dragon Knight. Bard, carry a chi. I'll ride Aoun. List arranged the mounts quickly. Woo! Bard did not reject a chi's ride. Of course, the Dragon Tooth platform was List's exclusive seat. No matter how much Bard liked a chi, he would not allow a chi to sit on it. Just like how the gray-mouthed Iron Dragon protected Piero, he did not have the right to sit on the Dragon Tooth platform. As such, a human and a dragon rode towards Blue Dragon Island. On List's chest was the little fire dragon Leo, who was in the form of magic power. Since he was going to Blue Dragon Island to show his authority, he might as well expose his trump card. If the light green gemstone dragon was not still on Flame Island, he would have brought 4 dragons with him. The general trend was already set. He did not care if he was exposed to the eyes of the various kingdoms on the legendary continent. The invisible dragon's combat power was not very outstanding, but its ability to travel through space was too strong. It was enough to ensure that he could escape from any dangerous situation. The smoke mission mentioned that the Eagle Kingdom was thinking about how to contain List's conspiracy. When the other kingdoms on the continent learned of the rise of List and the existence of a holy dragon like the Invisible Dragon, they would inevitably outline their conspiracies. But these conspiracies were nothing more than the dragon-slaying war and economic sanctions. No one could deal with the Invisible Dragon in the dragon-slaying war, and economic sanctions were even less effective. If List could not do business, he could go and rob. Robbing the Hot Spring Island made him fat. If he went to the mainland kingdoms to rob a few marquises, wouldn't he become a big fat pig? He could even go and rob the Dragon Knight. A lone Dragon Knight was no match for him at all. With the luxurious lineup of himself, Bard, Leo, and a chi, it was too easy to kill a lone Dragon Knight. If it was not for the fear of forcing the mainland kingdoms too far and making them reach an agreement to send out all the Dragon Knight to capture him, List would have developed this tactic long ago. Besides, I still have the smoke mission warning. He had a clear understanding of the situation on the continent. In the case of the Eagle Kingdom's 2 defeats in the dragon-slaying war, the other kingdoms would probably try to win him over. Maybe one of the kings would want to marry his daughter over. Of course, he didn't have too many thoughts about marrying the princess of a kingdom. What he wanted most now was not the surrender of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, but the reward of the previous smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, a cannibal tree dragon elf. This was the smoke serpentine prompt for the completion of the traitor punishment mission. When List transported food to Fire City, he went directly to Emily, who was repairing the road, and asked about his cannibal tree dragon elf. He had heard the magic platform's message report before. Emily was leading people to investigate the ogre incident, which was the reward of the previous smoke mission, traces of the ogre. Finally, they found the true culprit of the ogre, which was the reward of the previous smoke mission, cannibal trees. Finally, the third round of the mission about the ogre, which was the reward of the previous mission, cannibal tree dragon elf. Dragon elf. A dragon elf. Although this reward was much worse than the dragon reward, it was a shocking reward for List. He had an extraordinary desire for elves. He had long been looking forward to getting a dragon elf. After all, if a dragon-raising family didn't have a dragon elf, it would be too shameful. He originally thought that there wouldn't be any dragon elves in the wild. After all, the requirements for elves to evolve were too harsh. Great elves had to live with dragons for a long time to evolve into dragon elves. Dragons were extremely rare, and the ones that ended up in the wild were mostly evil dragons. How could they tolerate great elves approaching them? Therefore, he couldn't count on wild dragon elves, and snatching them wasn't realistic either. He could only nurture them himself. Phoenix Parasol Tree Great Elf Infant, who liked to touch small fire dragons, was the first dragon elf he was looking forward to. After a long time, Infant was still touching it and hadn't evolved. In the end, a chain mission that he didn't pay much attention to because of the dragon-slaying war suddenly rewarded him with a dragon elf, which made him pleasantly surprised. Unfortunately, Emily and the others had been tracking the cannibal tree for a long time, but they hadn't found the dragon elf. According to Emily's conjecture, the cannibal tree could burrow into the ground. This dragon elf might be hiding underground. After List personally searched the forest 3 to 4 times to no avail, he ordered Emily to continue searching. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to find this dragon elf. What should come couldn't run away. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.